I'm
Yeah, we
based
can start,
on
sir.
Vashon Island outside of Seattle.
Outside of Seattle. I had been to Seattle in 1993 for the Woodland Park Zoo.
வணக்கம். வலைத்தமிழ் வள்ளுவர் குடும்பம் இணைந்து இன்று ஒரு முக்கியமான திருக்குறள் சார்ந்த ஒரு ஆளுமையை நாம் சந்திக்க இருக்கின்றோம். இந்த ஆளுமையை வந்து 3 பேர் வந்து நாங்கள் அவங்களோட இன்ட்ராக்ட் பண்ணி எல்லாரோடையும் பயந்துக்கலாம்னு இருக்கோம். அது என்னோட இருக்க நான் வந்து ராஜேந்திரன், வள்ளுவர் குரல் குடும்பம் கிட்டத்தட்ட ஒரு 300 பேர் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு ஒன்றாக இணைந்து இயங்கக்கூடிய ஒரு அமைப்பில்லாத அமைப்பு. அது நான் ஒருங்கிணைப்பாளராக இருக்கேன். அடுத்தது என்னோட இருக்கவர் வந்து இளங்கோ. இளங்கோ வந்து அமெரிக்காவில் இருக்காங்க. அவங்க மென்பொருள் துறையில் இருக்காங்க. அவங்க வந்து திருக்குறள் ஆர்வலர். இது வரைக்கும் 30 ஆளுமைகளை வந்து நாங்கள் இது மாதிரி நேர்காணல் பண்ணிருக்கோம். ரொம்ப ஆழங்கால் பட்டவர். அது வெறும் திருக்குறளா பார்க்காம திருக்குறளை வந்து அப்ளைடு திருக்குறள் இலக்கியமா பார்க்கலாம். ஆனா நமக்கு வந்து வாழ்க்கையில வந்து அதை எப்படி நம்ம டே டு டே லைஃப்ல அப்ளை பண்ணுங்கிறது ரொம்ப முக்கியம். அது அந்த மாதிரி இதுல ரொம்ப அதுல வந்து ஆர்வம் உள்ளவர் அவரு. அடுத்தது என்னோட இருக்கவர் வந்து இன்னைக்கு டாக்டர் NVK அஷ்ரப். அவர் வந்து அடிப்படையில வந்து அவர் வந்து கால்நடை மருத்துவர். சென்னையில கால்நடை மருத்துவம் படிச்சவங்க. அவருடைய தாய்மொழி மலையாளம், தமிழ் நன்றாக அறிந்தவர். அவங்க அப்பா அரபிக் டிபார்ட்மெண்ட் ப்ரொஃபஸரா வந்து ஜமால் முகமது கல்லூரி திருச்சியில இருந்தவங்க. தமிழ் சூழல்ல வளர்ந்தவங்க. இந்தியா முழுக்க உலகம் முழுக்க டிராவல் பண்ணிருக்காங்க, பயணம் பண்ணிருக்காங்க. அவங்க வந்து கிட்டத்தட்ட ஒரு 20 ஆண்டுகளுக்கு மேலாக கோயம்புத்தூர்ல இருக்கும்போது அங்க ராம இருசுப்பிள்ளை, அருள்நிதி ராம இருசுப்பிள்ளைன்னு அவங்க திருக்குறள் திருமந்திரம் வகுப்பு எடுக்கும்போது அதுல ஓரமா உட்காந்து கேட்க ஆரம்பிச்சாங்க. அவருக்கு ரொம்ப ஆர்வம் வந்து அது திருக்குறள் பிடிச்சி இழுத்துருச்சு. அஷ்ரப் வந்து டெல்லியில பணிபுரிஞ்சுட்டு இப்ப வந்து திரிசூர்ல இருக்காரு. இளங்கோ இருக்காங்க. நான் வந்து சென்னையில இருக்கேன். நானு தாமஸ் வந்து சியாட்டல்ல இருக்காங்க. இப்ப 4 பேரும் நாங்க இணைஞ்சு இந்த வள்ளுவர் தான் இணைச்சு வச்சிருக்காங்க. இத இன்னைக்கு வந்து நம்ம திரு தாமஸ் வந்து நம்ம நேர்காணல்ல ஒரு நேர்காணல்ன்றதை விட இது ஒரு 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 கலந்துரையாடல் அப்படிதான் நான் பாக்குறேன். இதை அது வந்து இது இருக்கிறதுக்கு காரணம் அஷ்ரப் தான் எங்களுக்கு முதல்ல வந்து இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஒரு லேட்டஸ்ட் டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் வந்திருக்கு. தமிழர் அல்லாதவர்கள், இந்தியர் அல்லாதவர்கள், வேற்று மொழியை சார்ந்தவர்கள் ஆங்கிலத்தில் கொண்டு போயிருக்காங்க. எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச வரைக்கும் கடந்த 100 ஆண்டுகள்ல இது மாதிரி இல்லைன்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன்னு சொல்லி அஷ்ரப் அவரை தொடர்பு கொண்டு மின்னஞ்சல தொடர்பு கொண்டு அவரை பத்தி எங்களுக்கு கிட்டத்தட்ட 1.5 ஆண்டுகளுக்கு முன்னாடி அப்புறம் இளங்கோ வச்சு நம்ம இந்த நேர்காணல் பண்ணுவோன்னு பார்த்த சாரதி அவர் வலைத்தமிழ் பின்புலம் வந்து இயக்கிட்டு இருக்காரு. அவர் சொல்ல அப்புறம் இளங்கோ திரு தாமஸ் அவர்களை தொடர்பு கொண்டு இந்த மாதிரி ஒண்ணு நம்ம பேசுவோம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு கலந்துரையாடல் பண்ணுவோம்னு சொன்னோன்னா ஒத்துக்கிட்டாரு. இன்னைக்கு இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியில் இருக்கோம். நான் இப்ப வந்து நண்பர் திரு இளங்கோ அவர்களை திரு தாமஸை வந்து அறிமுகப்படுத்துமாறு நான் வேண்டிக் கொள்கிறேன். நன்றி.
நன்றிங்க ராஜேந்திரன் ஐயா, ரொம்ப அழகா தொடக்கத்தை கொடுத்துட்டீங்க. இந்த கோவிட் நமக்கெல்லாம் ஒரு சின்ன இடைவெளி கொடுத்தது. அந்த இடைவெளியில நாம வந்து மேலும் நல்ல திருக்குறள் படிச்சிருக்கோம். பட் மீண்டும் திருக்குறள் ஆளுமைகளை சந்திக்கின்ற வாய்ப்பு மறுபடியும் கிடைத்திருக்கிறது ஒரு இடைவெளிக்கு பிறகு. இன்றைக்கு நாம சந்திக்க இருப்பவர், திருக்குறள் என்பது எங்காவது வைக்க வேண்டிய செல்வம் அல்ல. எங்கேயாவது கொஞ்சம் அங்க மாடத்திலேயோ அலமாரிலேயோ நம்ம வச்சுட்டு போற செல்வம் கிடையாது. அது எப்படின்னா அது நம்ம மனதில் வைக்க வேண்டிய செல்வம். அந்த மனதில் அந்த செல்வத்தை வைத்தோம்னா அது நம்முடைய வாழ்க்கை நல்ல வாழ்க்கையாக அமைய வழிகாட்டியாக எப்பொழுதுமே இருக்கும் அப்படின்னு ஆணித்தரமாக சொன்ன திரு தாமஸ் ஹிட்டோஷி அவர்கள். அவரைத்தான் நாம் இன்று சந்திக்கிறோம். அவர் ஜப்பானை பூர்வீகமாக கொண்டிருந்தா கூட திருக்குறளின் ஆங்கில மொழிபெயர்ப்பினை அடுத்த ஒரு உயர்நிலைக்கு எடுத்து சென்றிருப்பவர். அவருடைய இளமை பருவம், அவருடைய தொழில், திருக்குறள் பயணம், இதை பத்தி எல்லாம் தான் நாம் இன்னைக்கு பார்க்க போறோம். திரு தாமஸ் அவர்களுடைய சுய விவர குறிப்பு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா 7 கடலை போல மிகப்பெரியது. பக்கம் பக்கமா போயிட்டே இருக்கு. இருந்தாலும் கூட திருக்குறளினுடைய அந்த ஈரடி ரத்தினம் போல சுருக்கமாக நான் சொல்ல முயற்சிக்கிறேன். அவருடைய தன்மைபுற குறிப்பை இப்போ பார்க்கலாம். திரு தாமஸ் அவர்கள் அமெரிக்காவில் வாஷிங்டன் மாநிலம் சியாட்டல் நகரில் இருக்கிறார். இவர் 1998 ஓபர்லின் காலேஜ் ஒஹாயோவில் BA படிப்பு முடித்தவர். 2008 ஒஹாயோ ஸ்டேட் யூனிவர்சிட்டியில் MFA பட்டம் முடித்தவர். இதை தவிர மிக முக்கியமானது, இவர் மதுரையில் 6 ஆண்டுகள் தங்கி, கிட்டத்தட்ட 6 ஆண்டுகள் தங்கி தமிழ் படித்தவர். இவருக்கு தமிழ் ஆசானாக இருந்தவர் முனைவர் KV ராமகோட்டி அவர்கள். இவரை பத்தி சொல்லணும்னா, இவர் தான் பின்னாளில் திரு தாமஸ் அவர்கள் திருக்குறளை ஆங்கிலத்தில் மொழிபெயர்க்க ஒரு பெரிய ஒரு தூண்டுகோலாக இருந்தவர். அவர் கேட்ட ஒரு கேள்வி, என்ன கேள்வின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, wouldn't it be good if someone finally did a proper literary translation of the திருக்குறள் அப்படின்னு அவர் ஒரு கேட்ட கேள்விதான் அவருக்கு ஒரு விதையை விதைச்சு அதன் அடிப்படையில் அவர் அந்த திருக்குறளை மொழிபெயர்த்திருக்கிறார் ஆங்கிலத்தில். இதை தவிர திரு தாமஸ் அவர்கள் ஒரு எழுத்தாளர், ஆசிரியர், மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர், செயல்திறனாளர், அதாவது பெர்ஃபார்மர், ஸ்டேஜில் பெர்ஃபார்ம் பண்றவர். அப்புறம் ஒரு பெரிய இசைக்கலைஞரும் கூட. இவர் எழுதிய திருக்குறள் நூல், அந்த மொழியாக்கம் செய்த நூல் த குரல், திருவள்ளுவர்ஸ் திருக்குறள். இது ஜனவரி 11, 2022 பீகான் பிரஸ் அப்படின்றவங்க வெளியிட்டிருக்காங்க. கிட்டத்தட்ட 6 ஆண்டுகள் இவர் அதற்காக உழைத்திருக்கிறார். இதை தவிர இவருடைய வலைதளங்கள் Pruiksma.com, அதில் போனீங்கன்னா நிறைய அவரை பற்றிய விவரங்கள், அவர் செய்திருக்கின்ற பணிகள் எல்லாமே அதில் இருக்கு. இதை தவிர கோசி கிராமர் சீரீஸ்ன்னு யூடியூப்ல நிறைய காணொலிகள் போட்டிருக்காரு. யூடியூப்ல போனீங்கன்னா திருக்குறள், எந்த திருக்குறள் எடுத்தாலும் அதுக்கு ஒரு விளக்கம், அதுக்கு அருமையான ஒரு பின்னணி, ஒரு இயற்கை சூழல், அந்த அடிப்படையில அவர் அந்த திருக்குறளை சொல்றது கேட்கறதுக்கே மிக மிக பரவசமாக இருக்குதுன்னு தான் சொல்லணும். இவர் எழுதின மற்ற நூல்கள் அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, த சேஃப்டி ஆஃப் எட்ஜஸ், கிவ், ஈட் அண்ட் லிவ் போம்ஸ் ஆஃப் அவையார், பாடி அண்ட் எர்த், அந்த மாதிரி நிறைய நூல்கள் எழுதியிருக்காரு. இவர் கலந்து கொண்ட நடத்திய நிகழ்ச்சிகள் நிறையவே இருக்கு. குறிப்பா சொல்லணும்னா 2022 நவம்பர், டிசம்பர் மாதங்களில் தமிழ்நாட்டில் 4 நிகழ்ச்சிகள், 2 தமிழ்லையும் 2 இங்கிலீஷ்லையும். அது எதை பத்தினா கிரியேட்டிவ் பர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ் இன் போத் தமிழ் அண்ட் இங்கிலீஷ், அந்த நிகழ்ச்சிகள் நடத்திருக்காரு. 2022 சிங்கப்பூர்ல ரைட்டர்ஸ் ஃபெஸ்டிவல் நடந்ததுல இவர் ஒரு முக்கியமான விருந்தினராக கலந்து கொண்டு பேசியிருக்கிறார். அது மாத்திரம் இல்லாம ஒர்க் ஷாப் ஃபார் யங் டான்சர்ஸ், இது சென்னையில ஸ்ராத்யா ஃபவுண்டேஷன் டான்ஸ் அகாடமியில அங்க ஒரு நிகழ்ச்சி கொடுத்திருக்காரு. A featured presentation on Cascadian Zen, இது சியாட்டல் யூனிவர்சிட்டியில கொடுத்திருக்காரு. An original show and music about the story of Sadako Sasaki, I think அதை நான் சரியா சொல்லலைன்னு நினைக்கிறேன், நாம சரியா கேட்போம், for the family series at the center of the arts, அந்த Vashan center of the arts அப்படிங்கிற இடத்துல கொடுத்திருக்காரு. அப்புறம் whimsical explorations of grammar in natural settings, இது அவருடைய அந்த கோசி கிராமர் சீரீஸ், அந்த வீடியோ யூடியூப்ல இருக்கிறதுல நிறைய இருக்கு. இதை தவிர இவர் விருதுகள் வாங்கியிருக்காரு. He received grants and fellowships from National Endowment for the Arts, for Culture, Artist Trust and US Fulbright Program. இதை தவிர இவர் பத்தின ஒரு சுருக்கமான, அதாவது ஒரு சுவாரஸ்யமான குறிப்புகளும் இருக்கு. இவர் ஒரு காலத்துல ஒரு ப்ரொஃபஷனல் மஜிஷியனாகவும் இருந்திருக்காரு. அதை பத்தி கொஞ்சம் அவர்கிட்ட பேச வேண்டியிருக்கு. அதே மாதிரி இவருடைய நோக்கம் அப்படின்னா என்ன, help make language come alive for others in ways that are both accessible and profound. இந்த மாதிரி இவரை பத்தி நிறைய சொல்லிட்டே போலாம். இருந்தாலும் நாம் உரையாடலுக்கு செல்லணும். இப்போ அடுத்ததாக திரு அஷரப் ஐயா அவர்களை அழைக்கிறேன் இந்த உரையாடலை தொடங்குவதற்கு.
Thank you, Ilango. I will be largely talking in English occasionally. Of course, I cannot tell the couplets in English. I have to recite them in Tamil. So only on exceptional circumstances, I would like to converse in Tamil. we have already introduced ourselves, and Mr. Ilanko has introduced yourself. So we would like you to talk now. And I would like to start with a simple, for me, as they said, I keep track of translations appearing on the net. Look for these days, it is easier. Not about 20 years back. Internet comes out with information of someone translating. I remember I was eagerly waiting for a translation to come out from the Pondicherry French Institute. I heard that someone is translating in English, not in French. I don't know what happened to that. And suddenly I came across the news of your translation. And I conveyed to CR, and CR said, yes. I remember mailing you once or twice, sending a message on the website for an online interview. I have now, first of all, I haven't read your book. I have read your introductions, excerpts, and there are already some selections that have already started appearing on the internet. And from your own videos, so I would have read about 18 or 17 chapters and your selected conversations about the Quran. So that is my acquaintance with respect to your translations. And many translations, there is a brand identity. There's a unique identity for some of the translations. And yours has its own brand. As you have said in one of your introductions, you have written an essay introduction where you have said there are no punctuations in your translations. The only punctuation is the dash, which is almost a replacement of the word is. So it will take some time for a reader to get acquainted with your translation. So you have this brand identity without commas, and you read it and you understand it. In that sense, your translation is unique. Recently, someone, an Indian, Mani Mohan, has translated the first 2 books. He said to publish it. I had the privilege of reviewing his text. He has done a very good job. And I felt, to some extent, it doesn't have a dash and dot. His translation was similar to some extent. Something that, because having read many translations, I always like to compare and then see how things are. So your translation has a brand identity, that is for sure. There's no doubt about it. And the characteristic feature of that is the brevity. What you have done is in 2 lines. And I remember, I just want to start with a question. I remember there are some people who think that you should translate the Quran without reading any commentary, without going through any prior translation, so that you don't get influenced. You read it straight away and translate it. Did you go through, of course, you have said you have gone through the old commentaries of Manakuravar and Parimaladagar. I learned in one of your introductions, you said you considered P.S. Sundaram's the best, and then given an example, and then went ahead how you have rendered. So did you go through any translations beforehand? And what do you think of your opinion of some people that you should not read, should not get influenced by any of the commentaries or translations, straight away translate? What is your opinion? Any classic for them?
Thank you for that wonderful question. There's 2 things that I want to say. The first is that I did not, from the beginning, intend to translate the Thirukkural. I only intended to study it as deeply as I could. And for that, the commentaries proved to be invaluable. In 2003 to 2004, I received a Fulbright fellowship from the U.S. government. I was in Tamil Nadu for a year. And I was studying under the topic of the relationship between language and land, between the way that people speak and particular places. And as part of that, I was staying Monday through Friday in my Tamil teacher's house, Munivar Kuve Ramakodi, our Vitla Tangi. Then on Saturdays and Sundays, I'd return to a village where I had lived for several years previously when I was first learning to speak Tamil. And so I would go and I'd be listening very carefully to how my friends and neighbors, and basically the family and families that adopted me as their own in the village, how they spoke. With Aya, with Dr. Ramakodi, I was interested to study the works of the Sangam period. So I began with Kurantoge, Purananuru, Tolkapiam, we read Silapadigaram, and perhaps most importantly, the Thirukkural, because I had been interested in this work for a long time. When I first began studying Tamil in 1998, I had no intention at that time to even sort of study literature. I was only hoping to be able to speak with people to the level that I would be able to move into a village and really converse and even come to think in the language, to feel the world in the language. And that was my primary aim. But of course, I couldn't escape hearing people speak about the Thirukkural, quoting particular verses, for example, or seeing in the government buses on the sign above the back of the bus driver a verse from one of the many particularly well-known and beloved verses from the Kural. So I had the work. It was very much in my consciousness and in my awareness. And my teacher would share verses from time to time. My teacher's wife, whom I addressed as Amma, would sometimes share a verse. I can later on, if you're interested, I can speak about some of the specific verses that were my first introduction to the Kural. But to answer your question, when I was learning when I was beginning to study the Kural, I just wanted to be able to enter it in Tamil, to think about it in Tamil, and for that, I needed the commentaries. I also, of course, needed the guidance of my extraordinary teacher. And so my intention was to go as deeply into the Tamil as possible and to do and use whatever means would help me to do so. So, for example, I memorized my favorite 600 or 700 of the verses. I learned how to write in the verse form of the Kural, in Kural Danba. I learned all of the different the principles that govern this particular kind of verse, and I would write every morning a Kural in Tamil and show it to my teacher. He'd usually say, "Idu vandu konjam sari paakano thiruthiduvom," ukkaandu adu sari paathu sari panniruvom. And through this, I really wanted to enter the world of the cultural context of when Thiruvalluvar wrote his extraordinary book, but also the poetic world, the poetic conventions, the feel of the verses, not just reading them silently on the page, but hearing them as I recite them, hearing how they sound, how they feel in the body. Different verses have a different feel, very physically. If you think about the way the tongue is moving, whether the vowel sounds are the longer or the shorter vowels, and so on. And so that was my initial entry. And for me, there was anyone and anything that could help me to understand the verses was very much welcomed. But as I said, I had no intention to translate the work. However, in the years since the 2003-2004 Fulbright year, when I would speak with my teacher on the phone, or when I would be able to go back and visit him in person, he would say, "யாராவதுப்பா ஒரு நல்ல திருக்குறள் கவிநயத்தோடு மொழிபெயர்த்தா நல்லா இருக்குமேன்னு அப்படி சொல்லுவாரு." And I'd say, "ஆமாங்க ஐயா, அப்படிதான் நல்லா இருக்கும்னு நான் சொல்லுவேன்." And then he would say, "And this person should also make use of all of those of the old commentaries that you and I studied together." We read the edition put out by Thiruparandar Kasimadam Urai Kottu. So it has 4, 5, 6, I think, of the most sort of the oldest and most esteemed commentaries. And so he thought such a person should read the same commentaries that you and I read together. And I'd say, of course, that would be really a good way to do it. Let them come and do it. I really had no idea that he was suggesting to me ever so gently that perhaps I might do it. And this is interesting because in every other area of life, he had no trouble telling me, "This செய்யணும், அது செய்யக்கூடாதுன்னு அப்படியே சொல்லுவாரு." But not this. And I think it's because he was a poet and he knew that you can't ask someone to take on a task like this unless it occurs to them naturally. அவங்க சொந்த மனசுல தான் தோணணும். You can suggest, you can imply, you can hint. And my teacher very patiently waited 12 years until I got the hint and decided very much one day it just occurred to me, maybe I will try to do a translation. And in the interim, I was, now well into 15, 16 years into my own apprenticeship as a writer in English, as a poet in English, which is, of course, another story that I can tell you about, because it has at its root, at its base, my encounter with Tamil, and particularly with the poetry of Abbayar. I'll set that aside for the moment. When I began to work on the translation, my most important aim was to convey something of the experience I have reading the Tamil, hearing the Tamil, reciting the Tamil in Tamil. And so for me, there was no interest in any of the previous English translations, because I was, however they translated it, that was fine for them. I really wanted to get something of my own experience of the verse, not just the meanings. Of course, there are many meanings to the verses, but also something of the rhythm, something of the poetic intensity, something of the music and harmonies in the language itself. And so for me, there was only one place to go, which was Thiruvalluvar. And if I needed help from there, to go to the commentaries. And then, of course, to discuss with my teacher. I was able in 2017 to return to Madurai. He lived in Madurai. I returned and he went through the entire translation with me and pushed me harder, I think, than he has ever pushed me before. And he had pushed me very hard many times before. So, because he also had excellent English. So I was able to really refine the translation in an unforgettable summer, in the summer of 2017, and then continued working from there and working. And it was really only when I had to find some way to fund this ongoing project that I began to look at other translations, because I had to, I applied for and was very grateful to receive a fellowship from the U.S. National Endowment for the Arts. They gave me a translation fellowship, which greatly aided me in my work. But I had to explain, why do we need a new translation? And when I looked at the other translations, and I looked at every single translation I could get my hands on through the University of Washington in Seattle, and I was surprised to find that almost all of the translations had, it's at least as far as I could experience in the English, a single aim of trying to render the idea as they understood it of each verse. And of course, that's a beautiful and noble task. But I did not find in any of the translations that I read Thiruvalluvar's playfulness, his sense of humor, the intensity of his choice of words, his constructions, his phrasing, what he says, what he leaves out. And for me, that is one of the main reasons why the book has endured for centuries and centuries, because we learn, of course, the ideas, we learn the principles, but we also enjoy the music. We also enjoy the rhythmic intensity. And I think, at least my experience of this great work, is that these two things are not two things, that the music and the meaning come together. The rhythm and the principles are of a piece, and the more fully those things are integrated, the more fully we get to experience something of what it is like to read the work in Tamil, which was my main aim. And so I have looked at translations, to be able to justify the translation, and I've looked at other translations. But for me, there's really only, at some level, the Thirukkural itself, and this unending and almost impossible task of how much of the poetry. How much of the life of the language can we get into the English? And so my efforts have been directed entirely toward that aim.
So I want to ask a follow-up question. So why Tamil? I mean, you had a scholarship. You had the opportunity to go anywhere in the world to learn any language. But why did you choose Tamil? Was there any specific reason?
That is also a wonderful question. And of course, I can give some reason of how it happened that I chose Tamil. But what I experienced was that in some more mysterious way, the language chose me. Because when I was graduating from college, where I had studied philosophy, because I was, and particularly I studied moral philosophy, ethics. I was interested in questions of morality, of how one lives, of what it means to be a good person, to be a person of character. I had already had these kinds of preoccupations on my mind, but I hadn't studied another language. And so I applied for a different fellowship to study Spanish, because I had met an extraordinary teacher in southern Mexico and I wanted to study Spanish, and I thought I would enter into the world of some of the villages in southern Mexico, because I was also interested even then in this relationship between people and place, particularly at the level of rural community, of village life. And this fellowship, which everyone told me I would get because I was a finalist and I had written an application that people said was a very good application, I didn't make any other plans. And then I didn't get it. I thought my life was over. And this other opportunity landed in my lap. And the opportunity was specifically to go to Madurai to teach English at the American College, to study Tamil, and then to do, if there's something beyond that a person on this fellowship wants to study, they can do it. So some people might study dance, some people might study music. I was interested in village life, and I wanted to live in a village. And so I wanted to be able to speak as well as possible. And I was extremely fortunate, blessed to encounter my very first week in Madurai, the man who became my Tamil teacher, Dr. K.V. Ramakodi. And he really brought me into the spoken language very carefully, very methodically, I took great pains to, from the very beginning, with pronunciation, with really entering into the language without, and leaving English behind, to the extent that one can do that with another language. And then from there, it is really Tamil that made me fall in love with Tamil. The friends that I made, the village that I found, and had just rented a room in, just so that I would be able to have a place to stay and to observe the village as best I could. And my landlords adopted me into their family, and I've been a member of their family now 23 years. And so the language, especially of my friends in the village, and also the language of Tamil poetry, because around maybe about 2 years into what turned out to be a 2.5-year stay, my teacher said to me that it was time to start studying written Tamil. And at the time I'd said, I think I'm still struggling to be able to speak to people. There's still so much I want to learn. I still feel like there's so much to learn. He said, அது சரி, அந்த ஊருக்கு போறேன்ல, ஊருக்கு போயிட்டு நம்ம எழுதிய கடிதம் படிக்க வேண்டாமா? இல்லைங்க ஐயா, படிக்கணும் அப்படின்னு. நம்ம கடிதத்துக்கு பதில் எழுதி அனுப்ப வேண்டாமா அப்படி கேட்டாரு. ஆமாங்க ஐயா, நாம எழுத முடியணும்னு அப்படி சொன்னேன். So we'll begin, he said. And I said, yes, of course, I want to be able to read letters you will write me, and to be able to write replies to the letters that you will send me. And so we read, in fact, through the entire series of government Tamil readers, from LKG, UKG, all the way up to 10th standard, +1, +2. And we read everything except the poetry sections, which my teachers said he didn't think they were the right poems for me at that time. And I was actually quite relieved, because poetry was something I hadn't really understood as a student. As a student of philosophy, I was particularly interested in clarity of meaning. And so I didn't have patience at the time for what I thought were the ornaments of poetry, metaphor and similes and things like that. I thought, just say what you want to say directly. I didn't get it yet. But at a certain point, my teacher insisted that it was time to learn poetry. And I, at this point, trusted my teacher quite deeply. And so I embarked on him on a study of the poetry of Avvayar. We began with Mudarai, and I memorized some 25 of her Venba, 4-line Venba poems. And because there was still enough distance between my understanding of Tamil and the language of those poems, they're very accessible poems, but I was still bridging the distance of 800, 900 years. When I memorized the poems, I couldn't worry about what they meant. I had the gist that my teacher had given me. I knew the general meaning, but I couldn't yet go word by word and say this is what it means. But memorizing those poems, I had to listen to them. And I listened in a way I hadn't listened before, or perhaps had listened as a child and had forgotten. I started to hear that these poems sound good. They have a kind of life to them. They have music to them. There's still lines I can remember that lit up for me. I would be on the bus memorizing these verses, and there's a line from Neer mel Thirukkural. And I thought, that line is so beautiful, because you have Neer and Ner, a kind of rhyming pattern that we find in English, say in poets like Emily Dickinson or William Carlos Williams or W.S. Merwin. But here, with such artistry, Neer, Ner, and just the rhythm, Neil Mel Thirukkural, I was caught. I was enticed, and I was invited through the doorway that Avvayar's poetry opened to me into the world of not just Tamil poetry, but of poetry in any language. So that when I finished those 2.5 years, I returned to English, and I suddenly could hear my own language in a totally new way. I could read poetry in English and savor the subtleties of the poetry itself, the music and the rhythm. And that's when I realized that I wanted myself to become a writer and a poet. And I began a long apprenticeship to language, to poetry in English, in Tamil, in Spanish. I also studied ancient Greek for a time. And through all of this, Tamil had been, and my teacher had been sort of, if you will, taking me by the hand and leading me forward step by step by step, which only increased my esteem, regard, and love for the language, as it, at the same time that it increased my esteem, love, and regard for poetry in English and in Spanish, and indeed in many other world languages. So that is perhaps a somewhat longer answer than you may have anticipated, but it is the answer that is true for me, and why it is that I have lived with this language gratefully for now 24 years.
Sometimes it is better, I remember reminded of chapter 38, the last one in Arathupal, Ool. So certain things happen for a good reason. It is just like, when in professional colleges in Tamil Nadu or in India in general, people apply for various professional colleges. The first option is medicine, then veterinary science comes later. So at that particular year, when I applied that academic year, M.G. Ramachandran, rightly so, he introduced economic criteria. Those who have fathers have certain income. My father being a professor, if you're a businessman, you can show undervalue your monthly income and get away. But if you're a salaried person, no. So I became forward in the sense, forward community in that particular year. I didn't get selected for medicine. People who didn't get wrote in the next year an improvement and then went to medicine, left veterinary science and went to medicine. I said, no, I don't want to go. I would like to stick to this. Because generally I was right from childhood, I was interested in, early morning when I am let out of the house. As a kid, I would go to the poultry shed and then catch a chicken, a bird and walk around. But I never thought that, that there is a profession for me waiting for. I never thought. Because the entire world, they talk about only two professions. Either you are a doctor or an engineer. You'll know, having spent time in Tamil Nadu. So now, it is only my veterinary science background brought me to wildlife conservation. And then access to Sangam poetry. No other literature in the world has so much of information on natural history. Let me tell you, very intricate relationships. So everything happens for a good reason. And for you didn't get selected for Spanish to go to South America. So fate has its own way. Good that.
ஊழியர் பெருவழி யாவல மற்றொன்று சூழினும் தான் முந்துரும்.
Finished.
It's interesting. I'll just say one quick story, which is the second month that I was studying with my teacher. There was two of us actually at that time studying. And we would when we would go there, we would usually have something to eat and then study, or we would study and then we'd eat something together. Sometimes we just ate if it was some festival or a special occasion. But one night we were sitting on the floor eating together, and he suddenly looked up and he looked at us and he said, 1 year ago, did you think that a year from now you would be coming to Madurai, to my house, and studying Tamil with me? And we said, no, sir, we had no idea that this is where we would be a year from now. And he said, well, that is what we in our tradition call fate. And then he went and continued eating his rice. And that was for me that was perhaps my first encounter with the chapter that you just mentioned with work, lived experience of that chapter.
தாமஸ் ரொம்ப, அதாவது நான் உங்க வீடியோ எல்லாம் பார்க்கும்போது நான் என்ன நினைக்கிறேன்னா, அஷரப் கேட்ட மாதிரி ஏன் 100 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன், இன்னைக்கு 130 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் இருக்கிறதா சொல்றாங்க இங்கிலீஷ்ல. மணவாளன் செம்மொழி ஆய்வு நிறுவனத்துல அவர் எல்லாம் கம்பைல் பண்றதுக்கு முயற்சி பண்ணார். 2006 இந்த ப்ராஜெக்ட் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணான்னு நினைக்கிறேன். அப்போ 50 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் இங்கிலீஷ்ல இருக்கிறதா சொல்றாரு. அந்த 50 கலெக்ட் பண்ணி அதுல 18 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் கம்பைல் பண்ணி போட்டிருக்காரு. அவர் சொல்றாரு 1794 ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் இங்கிலீஷ்ல ஆரம்பிச்சது. உங்களுக்கு தெரியும், 1730 வீரமாமுனிவர் இட்டலி லாங்குவேஜ்ல கொண்டு போனார், லாட்டின் லாங்குவேஜ்ல கொண்டு போனார். இங்கிலீஷ்ல 1794 தான் ஆரம்பிக்கிறாங்க. அப்புறம் எல்லிஸ் வராது. எல்லிஸ் 1777 பார்ன், 19 வயசுல இந்தியாவுக்கு வராரு. கிளர்க்கா செக்ரட்டரியா ஜாயின் பண்றாரு ரெவன்யூ போர்டுல. அந்த ரெவன்யூ டிபார்ட்மெண்ட் தான் நானு. ரெவன்யூ டிபார்ட்மெண்ட்ல கிளர்க்கா ஜாயின் பண்றாரு. அப்ப அவரு நிறைய பாலிகிளாட், நிறைய மொழி படிக்கிறாரு. இங்க அப்புறம் கலெக்டரா மாறுறாரு. ஒரு 10 வருஷம் கலெக்டரா இருக்காரு. சென்னை கலெக்டரா இருக்காரு. கலெக்டர் ஆஃப் கஸ்டம்ஸும் அவர் தான் இருந்தார். கமிஷனர் கஸ்டம்ஸ் நாங்க இப்போ சொல்லுவோம், கலெக்டர் ஆஃப் கஸ்டம்ஸ் அது இருக்காரு. அவரு டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்றது அவருடைய நோக்கம் கிடையாது. அவரு நிறைய படிக்கிறாரு. நீங்க படிச்ச மாதிரி ஔவையார் தான் இந்த டோர்வே ரொம்ப ஈஸியா கையை பிடிச்சு கூட்டு போவாங்க. பாட்டி கையை பிடிச்சு கூட்டு போறாங்க. எப்படி உங்க ஆசிரியர் ராமகோட்டையை சொல்றீங்களோ அது மாதிரி பாட்டி கையை பிடிச்சு கூட்டு வர, வாப்பா பேரா நீங்க கூட.
தாமஸே ஒரு பேட்டியில சொல்லியிருக்காரு, ஔவையார் தான் என்னுடைய முதல் ஆசிரியர் அப்படின்னு.
ஆசிரியர்களை
பாட்டி ஆகி ஆசிரியர்.
பாட்டி சொன்ன கதை இல்ல, பாட்டி சொன்ன கவிதை. கவிதைக்கு ஒரு எழுத்து தான் வித்தியாசம் தமிழ்ல. அப்ப என்ன சொல்றேன்னா, இவ்வளவு மொழிபெயர்ப்புகள் இருந்தும் அதுல ஒரு மொழிபெயர்ப்பு வேணும், அதை நீங்க பண்ணணும். உங்க ஆசிரியர் ராமகோட்டி உங்களுக்கு சொல்றாரு, அது வந்து எடுத்துக்கேன்னு சொல்லாம அந்த கம்பல் பண்ணியிருந்தா நீங்க வெளியே போயிருப்பீங்க. அது சொல்ல கிடையாது. அது ரொம்ப அழகா நீங்க சொன்னீங்க. நீங்க அதை அப்படியே உள்ள அவரும் கை பிடிச்சி கொண்டு வர்றாரு. அவரு கொண்டு வந்துட்டு எனக்கு என்ன பெரிய ஆச்சரியமா இருக்குன்னா, நீங்க அதாவது உங்க ட்ரெடிஷன், அதாவது 3 விஷயம் தெரியும்னு சொல்றாரு அவரு. லிட்ரரி, கல்ச்சுரல், லிங்குஸ்டிக், இடியம்ஸ். இது தெரிஞ்சாதான் ஒரு மொழிக்குள்ள டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ண முடியும்னு மனவாளன் சொல்றாரு. நீங்க தமிழ் லிட்ரரி ட்ரெடிஷன் தெரியாது, தமிழ் கல்ச்சுரல் பேக்ரவுண்டு தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்காக கிராமத்துக்கு போறீங்க, இந்த லிங்குஸ்டிக்ஸ் மொழியை நீங்க கத்துக்கிறீங்க. இந்த 3ம் நீங்க அப்படியே படி இன்னைக்கு நான் டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்றேன்னு சொல்லி 10 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் வச்சுக்கிட்டு நீங்க பண்ண கிடையாது. நீங்க வந்து இது வந்து அஷ்ரப் சொன்ன மாதிரி இது வந்து ஒரிஜினல். இட் இன்ஃபியூசஸ். உங்க வீடியோ பார்க்கும்போது நான் எப்பயுமே சொல்லுவேன் நானு, அந்த வீடியோ பாருங்க, அவர் முகத்துல வந்து ஏதாவது தெரியுதா, போய் தெரியுதா, ஒண்ணுமே தெரியாது. அதாவது இஸ் ஒன் வித் வள்ளுவர். அந்த வள்ளுவருடைய மைண்ட், அந்த வள்ளுவருடைய உள்ளம் அப்படி நெருங்கி போய் பார்க்கணும். நெருங்கி போய் பார்த்துட்டு அந்த அந்த சொல் வந்து பொருளா மாறுது, அந்த பொருள் வந்து உணர்வா மாறணும். இந்த 3 ஸ்டேஜ் வந்து அவர் இலங்கை ஜெயராஜ் அடிக்கடி சொல்லுவார். அவர் அதில் தான் நான் அடிக்கடி எனக்கு கேட்டது. ஒரு வேர்ட் இருக்கு, வேர்ட் ஹஸ் காட் அ மீனிங். தட் மீனிங் நீட் டு யூ நீட் டு ஃபீல் த மீனிங் அண்ட் இன்டர்னலைஸ் த மீனிங். ஆக்சுவலி only when you internalize, then it merges with each and every cell of your body. அந்த செல்ல போய் அப்படியே கலக்கும் போது ஒரு புது ப்ராடக்ட் வரும். அந்த ப்ராடக்ட் வந்து you got a root in everything. You got a root in மணக்குடவர். ஏன்னா மணக்குடவர், பழிமேழகர் 2 பேர் ஒரே வந்து இன்னைக்கு தமிழ்நாட்டிலேயே பல பேர் படிக்க மாட்டாங்க. அது மணக்குட பழிமேழகரா தெரியும், ஆனா மணக்குடவர் வந்து பல பேர் பார்க்க மாட்டாங்க. நீங்க அதெல்லாம் படிச்சிருக்கீங்க. 600 திருக்குறளுக்கு மேல மனப்பாடம் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. எனக்கு ரொம்ப ஆச்சரியமா இருக்குது. எனக்கு கூட 600 தெரியுமான்னு எனக்கு சந்தேகமா இருக்குது. நான் வந்து ஒரு நாள் உட்காந்து மனப்பாடம் பண்ணதில்லை, ஆனா எனக்கு தெரியும் ஒரு 500 600 தெரியும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஆனா அந்த 600 திருக்குறள் மனப்பாடம் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. அதை வந்து அந்த நேட்டிவ் லாங்குவேஜ்ல பார்த்திருக்கீங்க. அந்த பொருளை வந்து உரையாசிரியர்கள் மூலமா அஷ்ரப் கேட்ட கேள்விக்கு உரையாசிரியர்கள் தேவை. ஏன்னா நீங்க வேற ட்ரெடிஷன்ல இருந்து வரீங்க, உங்க பேக்ரவுண்ட் வேற. ஜப்பனீஸ் ஆரிஜின், brought up in Europe and living in USA and multicultural background. நேச்சுரலாவே உங்களுக்குள்ள பல டேலண்ட் இருக்குது. அது யூனிக் பர்சன். எவ்ரி ஒன் இஸ் யூனிக் பர்சன். நீங்க இதை வந்து ரொம்ப அழகா வந்து எனக்கு ரொம்ப வியந்து போய் பார்க்கறது என்னன்னா, இவ்வளவு நெருக்கமா வந்து அது அப்படியே வள்ளுவர் உள்ளத்தை அதை சொல்லும் போது அந்த வீடியோல 1.5 minute to இது வரைக்கும் 63 வீடியோ உங்க இதுல இருக்குது. நேற்று இந்த டேட்டா பார்த்தேன். திருக்குறள் மட்டும் 63 வீடியோ இருக்குது. எல்லாமே 1.5 நிமிஷம், 2 நிமிஷம், 2.3 நிமிஷம், அவ்வளவுதான். இந்த 3 நிமிஷத்துக்குள்ள அந்த குறளுடைய பேக்ரவுண்ட், அந்த குறளுடைய தமிழ், அந்த குறளுடைய ஆங்கில மொழிபெயர்ப்பு, அது ஒரு லைன் உங்களை பத்தி ஒரு ஃபீலிங், அதை சொல்லும் போது எனக்கு தெரியுது நீங்க ரசிச்சு ருசிச்சு அதை வந்து அப்படியே சாப்பிட்டு அதை அப்படியே ஷேர் பண்றது வந்து நல்லா புரியுது. அது உண்மையிலே ரொம்ப ஒரு நல்ல முயற்சி அது. அதாவது அந்த மண்ணுல போய் கலந்து அங்க வந்து இருந்து கொடுத்தது ரொம்ப அருமையா இருக்குது. இது இப்ப எனக்கு வந்து இதுல ஒரே ஒரு இதுல வந்து இவ்வளவு சொல்லிட்டு உங்களை பத்தி இவ்வளவு நேரம் உங்களை நான் ரசிச்சேன். இதுல எனக்கு என்ன கேள்வி அப்படின்னா, இதுக்கு தலைப்பு நீங்க எல்லாமே என்ன பண்ணிருப்பாங்க, எத்திக்ஸ், வெல்த் அண்ட் லவ் அப்படின்னு கொடுப்பாங்க. நீங்க வந்து வித்தியாசமா பவர், நான் சொல்லுவேன் திருக்குறள் இஸ் ஆப்ரேட்டிங் மேனுவல் ஃபார் மீனிங்ஃபுல், எஃபெக்டிவ் அண்ட் ஜாய்ஃபுல் லிவிங். அறத்துப்பால், பொருட்பால், இன்பத்துப்பால், காமத்துப்பால். இது 3 டைமென்ஷன் லைஃப். 3 என்ஜாய் பண்ணும், 3 வந்து பேலன்ஸ் இருக்கணும். நீங்க வந்து இந்த செகண்ட் இது வந்து பவர்னு போட்டீங்க. அது ஏன்னு தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்கு ஆசைப்படுறேன். 1. 2வது வந்து எத்திக்ஸ், பவர், லவ் ஃபார் a changing world. Everything is changing every minute. As Buddha says, every moment we are a new person. We can't take bath in the same river twice. The Buddhism has got a lot of influence in Southeast Asia and especially in Japan and now all over the world. You can't take bath twice in the same river ன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. நீங்க சொல்லுங்க for a changing world. அதுல வந்து அந்த இந்த கொஸ்டின் வந்து அப்புறம் இந்த for a changing world அந்த ஏ எடுத்தா கூட ethics, power, love for changing world. It has got a totally new meaning. எனக்கு இந்த ஏன் பவர்னு போட்டீங்க, And for a changing world, something which is not changing 2000 years, it is not a new thing. He has inherited from the past wisdom, and then his own wisdom, and he has given a new product, வள்ளுவம். இதுல வந்து ஏன் நீங்க பவர்னு போட்டீங்க? அது சேஞ்சிங் வேர்ல்டுக்கு இது எப்படி அப்ளிகபிள்? அதான் எனக்கு கேட்கணும்னு ஆசை.
சரிங்க. பவர்ங்கிறதுல so the what's called the reading line on the book is the classical Tamil masterpiece on ethics, power, and love. And why power? இது வந்து நல்ல கேள்வி. We could say ethics, wealth, and love. But and this is a conversation I had with the publisher, with Beacon Press. What I felt was something that you yourself hinted at when you were asking the question. You're talking about effective living, and that something about that, the flavor of effective. How is it that we act effectively? How is it that we execute an act? And even we look at pural. There are so many purals to pural. We can say wealth, we can say meaning, we can say substance, we can say so many different things. And so the publishers thought that power would encompass all of the sense of, what does it mean to rule justly? What does it mean to be a leader? How does one lead with how one earns and distributes and makes use of their wealth? How does one advise a leader? All of these things seem to be a way to invite an English reader into the work who may never have heard of the work before. Because of course, power in English also includes the sense of, we say money is power. This is a commonplace phrase that we have in English. And so that power and money are already joined in the sort of imaginative and the consciousness, if you will, of many people in the English-speaking world. And so that's how I felt that would be a suitable invitation into the work. The other phrase that you mentioned, ethics, power, and love for a changing world, is the title that I gave to a talk that I gave last year. And I think also I'm currently putting together an online course that I want to offer about as an introduction to the Thirukkural. And what I wanted to draw attention to with that phrase for a changing world is not so much that the ideas or principles of the Thirukkural, of Thiruvalluvar, are themselves changing, although of course there is the beautiful chapter in Iliamai, nothing stays, right? But I wanted to point out that here is a work which all of these centuries later may be even more essential now, when we live amidst all of the change that we see around us, change which can be quite disorienting, quite frightening, in fact. All of our ideas of right and wrong, of power, of money, of love, all of these things are in a kind of upheaval, our relationship to the natural world. And what I want to share with readers in English is that here is a work which speaks to our time profoundly. It speaks to our time. What does it mean to lead, for instance, with integrity and wisdom, even if our situation may seem chaotic or confusing or difficult to navigate? What does it mean to act with integrity in one's home, or in one's relationships, in one's family, in one's all of the areas of one's life? And so there is a steadiness, in fact, that I hope to draw people's attention to, so that I can offer an inspiring answer to the question, why should I read this book? What might this book have to offer me? And I, from the very beginning, have always been impressed by the simultaneous practicality and profundity of the Thirukkural. We are not invited into philosophical discussions. We're not invited into metaphysical conundrums. We are invited into the nitty-gritty of everyday life, whether it's everyday life in the home or everyday life at the highest levels of the state. And how do we embody wisdom in the everyday world that we live in, with all of its natural elements, with all of its fellow animals, with its wild landscapes and its human landscapes and its human and wild landscapes interwoven. And so what I was hoping to hint at with that title for that previous talk was how even in a changing world, or perhaps particularly in a changing world, here is a book that can be a guide, that can lend a hand, if you will, that can remind us of what it means to be generous, noble, upright, compassionate, and forgiving.
Yeah, you said it well, because I also always refer Thirukkural as my GPS. No, GPS not only gives you the direction, but also when you miss your direction, then it will take you, redirect you to the right place, right? So that's how I compare the Thirukkural to in my life. So I think
கூட நிறைய பேர் கேள்வி கேட்பாங்க, ஏன் நான் திருக்குறளை படிக்கணும், இன்னைக்கு ஏன் திருக்குறளை படிக்கணும், இதை அடிக்கடி இளம்போது சொல்லுவாரு. அது குறிப்பா தமிழ்நாட்டிலேயே பல பேர் கேட்கறாங்க. நீங்க எப்பயோ எழுதிட்டு போயிட்டாரு 2000 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னால, ஏன் நான் இன்னைக்கு நான் படிக்கணும், வெளியே போயிட்டோம், நாங்களாம் நல்லா தான் இருக்கோம், நல்லா ஜாலியா இருக்கமே, நல்லா சம்பாதிக்கிறோம், நல்லா இருக்கோம், ஹாப்பியா தான் இருக்கோம், இதுக்கு மேல என்ன ஹாப்பினஸ் இருக்கு அப்படின்னு பல பேர் கேட்கறாங்க. அதுக்கு உங்களை மாதிரி இருக்கவங்க இதை படிச்சுட்டு ஒரு ஹோலிஸ்டிக் லுக், நீங்க சொன்னீங்க மணி இஸ் பவர்னு சொன்னீங்க. வள்ளுவர் சொல்றாரு, அறிவுடையார் எல்லாம் உடையார். அறிவுதான் இப்ப இன்டெலெக்ட். அந்த இன்டெலெக்ட் வந்து தட் இஸ் ஆல்சோ பவர். இன்டெலெக்ட் இஸ் பவர், மணி இஸ் பவர், அண்ட் ஹவு டு யூஸ் திஸ் மணி அண்ட் இன்டெலெக்ட் யூ நீட் ஹேவ் a holistic லுக் ஆஃப் வள்ளுவம். நீங்க ஒரு போர்ஷன் எடுத்துக்கிட்டு நம்ம பண்ண முடியாது, அப்படியே முழுசா பார்க்கணும், அப்படியே சாப்பிடணும், அப்படியே சாப்பிடணும். அதுல வந்து வள்ளுவர் நான் ஏன் அப்படியே சாப்பிடணும்னு சொல்றாருன்னா, 2 குறள் சொல்றப்பாரு. இது கூட நீங்க சொல்லணும், ரொம்ப இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் குறள் அது. ஒண்ணு அறிவுடைமையில, எப்பொருள் யார் யார் வாய் கேட்பினும் அப்பொருள் மெய்ப்பொருள் காண்பது அறிவு, அறிவுடைமை. எப்பொருள் எத்தன்மை தாயினும் அப்பொருள் மெய்ப்பொருள் காண்பது அறிவு, ஸ்பிரிச்சுவல் ட்ரெடிஷன். இது வந்து அறத்துப்பால். இந்த 2 குறளை வச்சுட்டு நானே சொன்னாலும் இதை நீங்க அப்படியே எடுத்துக்காதீங்க. ஜஸ்ட் யுவர் செல்ஃப், ஃபீல் யுவர் செல்ஃப், அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் யுவர் செல்ஃப், கொஸ்டின். If it is fine, internalize. If it is not fine, throw it, including Thirukkural. If you don't find any portion, leave it. Or with the changing time, you can find new meaning. Please do so. You've got every liberty to do so. It is not a holy text. It's a guide. இந்த 2 ரீசனுக்காகவே, 2 குறளுக்காகவே திருக்குறளை நம்ம அப்படியே இன்டர்னலைஸ் பண்ணோம். யாராவது எல்லாத்தையும் எழுதிட்டு வேணும்னா எடுத்துங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்ல மாட்டாங்க. அந்த உங்க இதுல கூட அவர் ரொம்ப அழகா சொல்லிருக்காரு, it gives a fresh look into your translation gives a fresh, there's no reprimand. This translation provides a refreshing remembrance and illustration within bracket, without the usual reprimands and dire warnings. He only says, he only suggests, if you do this will happen. Cause and effect. இதை செஞ்ச இது நடக்குது. அது சொல்ல பாருங்க, this translation provides a refreshing remembrance and illustration without the usual reprimands and dire warnings of how to be a good steward of the planet and what it means to live a good life. A much needed map of astonishingly humane guidance and care. There's no religious belief attached, nothing is excellent. This gentleman, Aimi Nilkumathil. I'm not able to pronounce his name. I'm sorry for that. Author of World of Wonders. Excellent. He has nicely put the soul of your translation. You have taken the soul of Valluvar and the soul of your translation, this one quote which you have put in your website, excellently sums up. அதனால தான் வள்ளுவர் வந்து ரொம்ப he stands tall and he continues. அந்த அடிக்கடி கேட்கிற கேள்விக்கு ஏன் திருக்குறள் படிக்கணுங்கிறதுக்கு உங்களை மாதிரி இருக்கவங்க தான் பதில் சொல்ல முடியும். ஏன் படிக்கணும்னு சொல்லி எங்களுக்கா தெரியல, நீங்க தான் சொல்லணும். தமிழ்ல கூட 2 வார்த்தை சொல்லுங்க, ஏன் வந்து திருக்குறளை படிக்கணும் அப்படின்னு.
அதாவது வந்து நான் இதே கேள்வி வந்து சிங்கப்பூர்ல கேட்டாங்க. அப்போ எனக்கு என்ன தோணிருச்சுன்னா, நான் வந்து நம்ம திருக்குறளுங்கிறது நமக்கு பெரிய செல்வம். இது ஒரு பெரும் செல்வம். அது வந்து அதை மனசுல வச்சுக்கிட்டா அப்ப நம்ம இன்னும் எப்படி நல்லா வாழ முடியும்ங்கிறது நமக்கு தெரிஞ்சிடும். தெரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டு நம்ம அப்படியே வாழ முடியும். அதாவது சரி, இதுக்கு நமக்கு போதும், அதுக்கு மேல என்ன இருக்கும்னு நம்ம நினைக்கலாம். ஆனா பார்த்தாதான் தெரியும் இல்லைங்களா? இது வச்சுக்கிட்டு சரி வச்சுக்கிட்டு பாருங்க, படிச்சு பாருங்க. அப்போ உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்ச ஒரு குரல் பாருங்க, அதை வந்து மனப்பாடம் பண்ணி இப்போ உங்க வாழ்க்கைய கொஞ்சம் கவனமா பாருங்க. அந்த குரல் எங்கே கொஞ்சம் பொருத்தமா வருது, பொருத்தமா வரும். அப்போ அது வரும்போது ஆஹா, இதனாலதான் நம்ம திருக்குறள் படிக்கிறோம்ங்கிறது உங்களுக்கு இது நல்லா வந்துடும், தெரிஞ்சிடும், விளங்குறோம்.
ரொம்ப மகிழ்ச்சி. மற்ற ஃப்ரெண்டு கேள்வி கேட்பாங்க. அதுக்கு முன்னாடி ஒரே ஒரு இந்த வாழ்க்கையோட சேர்த்து பார்க்கணும்னு சொன்னீங்க பாத்தீங்களா? நான் ஒரு வீடியோ பார்த்தேன். அதை நீங்க சொல்லும் போது எல்லா குறளும் நீங்க அப்படியே உணர்ந்து அதுல அப்படியே ஒன்றி போய் தான் சொல்லுவீங்க. அன்பிற்கும் உண்டோ அடைக்கும் தாழ் ஆர்வலர் புன்கனீர் பூசல் தரும், புன்கனீர் பூசல் தரும். உங்க அடாப்டட் அம்மா சொன்னீங்க, நீங்க அந்த கிராமத்துக்கு போயிருக்கும் போது she was not well. அவங்க வந்து she could have passed away but she didn't die that time. அந்த அம்மா வந்து உங்களை போய் பாக்குறாங்க, நீங்க போறீங்க, அவங்க பேச முடியல கூட கண்ணுல வந்து 2 பக்கமும் கண்ணுல வந்து கண்ணு தண்ணி இருக்கு, நீங்க அதை பாக்குறீங்க, உங்களுக்கு உடனே இந்த குறள் ஞாபகம் வருது. அது அப்ப வந்து அவங்க சாக மாட்டாங்க, சாகல. ஏன்னா அவங்களுக்கு இன்னொரு பையன் வரணுமே, அந்த பையனை பார்க்காம அவங்க சாக மாட்டாங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒருத்தர் பக்கத்துல சொல்றாரு. உடனே உங்களுக்கு என்ன ஞாபகம், ஏன் கண்ணுல why the tears are swelling in her eyes அப்படின்னு நீங்க கேள்வி கேட்கறீங்க. வள்ளுவர் சொல்றாரு, ஆர்வட பூங்கனீர் பூசல் தரும். அதையே அந்த அன்பை வெளிப்படுத்துன்னு சொல்ற. அதை நீங்க எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணும்போது ரொம்ப அழகா அந்த ஒவ்வொரு குறளும் எடுத்து நம்ம ரியல் லைஃபோட பொருத்தி பார்க்கணும் அப்படின்னு சொன்னீங்க பாத்தீங்களா? உங்களுக்கு டக்குன்னு 600 குறள் மனப்பாடம் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க, மேலே 1000 குறள் உங்களுக்கு தெரியும். உங்களுக்கு டக்குன்னு அந்த குறள் வந்து முன்னாடி நிக்குது. இட் மேக்ஸ் யூ பெட்டர் பர்சன். உங்களை வந்து நான் முன்னையோட அது உணர்வுபூர்வமா உள்ள வாங்குறோம் நம்ம. அது இட்ஸ் நாட் அ மியர் லிட்ரேச்சர். ரொம்ப அழகா சொன்னீங்க, நன்றி.
நன்றிங்க.
நீங்க என்ன கேக்குறீங்க?
I would just trying to find out how many chapters of your translations I have gone through. 12 chapters plus your videos. These are my only acquaintances. And I wrote down some of the very interesting phrases, half sentences you have done. Number 1, Kural number 76, Marathirkum Agde Tunai. I have seen people Maram as translating it as bravery, but it doesn't. If you take that rendering, it doesn't suit the first part of the sentence translation. So you have said, which is the way I think is the right one. Love is friend to, wrong to. And you have actually have in your audio also, you have, but you are not, you explain this reason why you didn't take Maram as bravery or whatever, but love is a friend to, wrong to. Which is a right thing. In fact, even a thief, when he goes for robbery, he considers his family. I mean, is that the reason why I would like to know what was your reason behind the decision to render it this way.
I'm not sure that I can reconstruct the entire journey that went there, except to say that the general journey has, for each of these verses, has been to consider, all of the commentaries that I had read, my understanding, my teacher's understanding, and then to see what words in English would be, one, most faithful to the original, to the extent that I can get it there, but also most alive in English, so that in English as well, we're not reading a mere instruction, but we are sitting with a great soul, and we are listening to the music of their wise speech, and that the qualities of the words in English themselves are part of what instructs our hearts. They're part of what brings us into the mind of a great soul like Valluvar. And so all I can say, without going back to the various drafts and all of the notes that I have there in my office, is that, to the best of my knowledge at the time, that seemed to be the truest way to render it in English now, that would be most powerfully and fully understood. So that is the best answer I can give, sort of on the spur of the moment.
Okay, thank you. I have 3 or 4. I will have a quick 2 minutes on that. Agula Neera. Now this is a couplet where I got acquainted. I had read it, but I didn't know its significance, only through CR. In your life, you learn certain couplets through somebody. You hear Abdul Kalam's speech, and then இது மாதிரி ஒரு குரல் இருக்கா அப்படின்னு சொல்லி நம்ம ரெஃபர் பண்ணுவோம். ஒரு டிரான்சிஸ்டர் ஆன் பண்ணும்போது ஒரு குரல் கேட்போம். This is how I learned in the beginning. அப்ப அந்த ஆகுல நீர பிற அப்படிங்கறத வந்து நீங்க, it's the shortest line in Thirukkural, you know that. All else nothing but noise. ஒரு சத்தம் தான். என்ன நீ சவுண்ட் விடுற, என்ன நீ லுக் விடுறங்கிற மாதிரி ஒரு சவுண்ட் தான். நாய்ஸ்ன்னு அருமையா யூஸ்வலி empty show அப்படிம்பாங்க. Usual translation is empty show. It's only a show. I am increasingly moving with my family, friends, brothers and sisters and colleagues. I'm getting to know more about this kural. A lot of people put up a show in the public life, but they don't realize, their originality comes once in a while. They are acting. They are not natural, So that is a very, and you said empty noise. That is a very interesting one. If you have anything to say about it, you can say it later. Let me go to the next one. Siriyar Serkariya Seigaladar. Literal translation is something different, but you have used a very interesting, small to do what everyone can. Small do what everyone can. You just change it, and it has its own impact. I would say the small people cannot do rare things. That is a literal translation, but you have done beautifully. Small do whatever everyone can. Ellarum seiyada seivanga. Adu ellarum seiyala. Rare things only rare people do it. That these are the 2 things I just wanted to. 3 couplets. If you have anything to say about it, you can say.
I would say only that I love that you mentioned the Agala Neera Pira. Nothing but noise was one attempt where I was trying to get the Yadagaimone poetic pattern of Tamar, suggest something of that in the English. So nothing but noise in the so the alliterative part of that, the end sounds, nothing but noise. I hope my intention as a poet is that adds to not only the memorability of the translation, but its force, its capacity to enter our consciousness, our hearts, our awareness, and remain there as a guide and as a teacher. And the same thing with Seyakariya Sevar Periyar. And with that also, I how simple the verse is, so simple in the Tamil. There's this extraordinary elegance and simplicity to the Tamil, and I wanted to at least attempt in the English to convey simultaneously the simplicity, ordinary words, but charged with the wisdom that Thiruvalluvar infuses them with. So I am grateful for you pointing out those particular verses.
I am so amazed. ஏன்னா நீங்க சொல்றது வந்து அதுக்கு திருவள்ளுவரே சொல்லியிருக்காரு இல்லையா, சொல்லுக சொல்லை பெரிதோர் சொல் அச்சொல்லை வெல்லும் சொல் இன்மை அறிந்து. அவ்வளோ அந்த ரைட் சாய்ஸ் ஆஃப் வேர்ட் எடுத்து நீங்க போட்டிருக்கீங்க. அது வந்து இட்ஸ் அமேசிங். அதான் அக்ஷரப்பையா சொல்றாரு இதுலயே.
You are a Buddhist. The very first couplet sloka in Dhammapada is this very same Manathukan Masilanathan. Because it's all virtues come from mind. Very first person in Dhammapada. Mind is chief. Mind made they are. So it's a actually Thirukkural generic ethics, the chapters and many, especially in on friendship and a lot of similarities with Buddhism. It's its soul, its basic fundamentals. If you ask me, it is from Jainism, but it has taken. There are a lot of Valluvar didn't restrict himself. He might have belonged, like all of us, he might have belonged to various, you are a Buddhist, I am born into a Muslim family, maybe a Christian. But his idea was not to put that in front. Wherever there are ethics, whatever that prevailed on during his time, and even with the complete 100% foresight. That is the beauty of the classic. You have still 90% of what he has taught is very relevant. I say 90% for various reasons. I would like to. We have a friend called Theodore Bhaskaran, who is a retired Postmaster General. He is also a wildlife environmentalist. He writes articles and also interested in literature, epigraphy, anthropology. Okay. He used to tell me, Ashraf, Thirukkural is fantastic, brilliant, all fine, except that I don't agree with two chapters. One is Kallun-Namai, the other one is Kural. Okay. These days, eating meat is quite common, particularly among the Buddhist world, and drinking, of course. So how do you reconcile this fact that the Thirukkural, we say that if we have to take it to the masses, that large mass of people do eat meat, do drink?
That is a great question. And I've pondered that question. And one of the things that Dr. Ramakodi and I discussed at great length was that each of these verses, although they stand very easily on their own and we can relate them to our own direct experience, and we must, to really savor, to be able to ingest the wisdom, to allow it to nourish our hearts and minds. But there is also the importance of the context of the verses, not only in their particular chapters, but also in the larger sort of subsections and sections of the work. And just as human beings come in so many varieties, and we come from so many different religious traditions, even within particular religious traditions, we may have our own particular point of view on a religious or spiritual or philosophical tradition. And people in English, and they ask me about this book, is like, well, all of these rules apply to everyone? And I say, well, actually, no. There are rules for leaders, not rules, but guidelines, inspiration for people who find themselves in a position of leadership. And a leader will have particular responsibilities they need to respond to, which may be different from the lover that we encounter in the third part of the book, or from the person who has decided to renounce a particularly worldly life and practice tavam, or whatever it may be. And so there is an extraordinary generosity to Thiruvalluvar and to the Thirukkural, which says, here are these precepts, these inspirations which apply to many people. And I think that the unspoken generosity is, take those that you need. Take those that will guide you to your own particular destiny, so that you may flourish in that which is yours to undertake, and that your fellows may flourish in those paths which are theirs to undertake, and that together we may flourish as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
very well explained. I mean, இப்ப கூட அந்த சிலை 133 அடி உயரம் சிலை கன்னியாகுமரியில வச்சிருக்காங்க. அது வைக்கும்போது இதே டிஸ்கஷன் வந்து நம்ம இங்க சென்னையில வந்து சட்டசபையில நடந்தது, அசம்பிளியில நடந்தது. அப்போ ஒரு மெம்பர் கேட்கிறாரு, இந்த கல் உண்ணாமை சொல்றீங்க, நீங்களே கடையெல்லாம் வச்சு, டாஸ்மாக் கடையெல்லாம் வச்சு வருவாயெல்லாம் கவர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு இன்கம் வருது, இது எப்படி அப்படின்னு சொல்றாங்க. அதுக்காக ஒரு அடி குறைச்சிடுங்க, 132 அடி வைங்க அப்படிங்கிறாங்க. அப்ப சீஃப் மினிஸ்டர் இருந்தவர், நல்ல திருக்குறளையும் நல்ல ஆழங்கால் பட்டவர், அவர் தான் வள்ளுவருக்கு கோட்டை கட்டாரு, சிலையை வச்சுட்டு இருந்தாரு. அவரு சொன்னாரு, சில பேருக்கு கல்லுண்ணாமை பிடிக்காது, சில பேருக்கு வாய்மை பிடிக்காது, சில பேருக்கு வந்து புலால் மருத்துவம் பிடிக்காது, இப்படியே புறநிலை வழிதல் சில பேருக்கு பிடிக்காது. இப்படியே போனா ஒவ்வொரு அடியா குறைச்சா வள்ளுவர் சிலையே வைக்க முடியாது. நமக்கு என்ன பிடிக்குதுங்கிறது வேண்டாம். நீங்க நல்ல அழகா சொன்னீங்க. எல்லாரும் ஏன்னா மனிதர்கள் பலதரப்பட்ட மனிதர்கள். ஆனா இன்னைக்கும் அந்த 133 சாப்டரும் முழுசா வாழ முடியும்னு நம்புறவங்க இருக்காங்க. அவங்க 1% இருக்கலாம், 2% இருக்கலாம். கொல்லாமை, புலால் மறுத்தல், புறநிலை வழியாமை, வாய்மை, இது எல்லாமே முக்கியம்னு நினைக்கிறவங்க இன்னைக்கும் உலகத்தில் இருக்காங்க. அப்ப அந்த செக்மெண்ட்டுக்கு அது போகும். நல்லா அழகா சொன்னீங்க. அதனால வந்து இது பிடிக்கும் பிடிக்காதுன்னு சொல்றதை விட்டு எது பிடிக்குதோ அதை சாப்பிடுங்கன்னு ரொம்ப அழகா சொன்னீங்க. இன்னொன்னு உங்க குரல்ல டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன்ல பார்த்தேன், இந்த 412 செவிக்கு உணவு இல்லாத பொழுது சிறிது வயிற்றுக்கும் ஈயப்படும். இந்த ஈயப்படும்ல வந்து ஒரு ஒரு நக்கல், ஒரு நையாண்டி, ஒரு வள்ளுவருடைய இங்க இங்க அதை கொஞ்சம் போட்டு போ அப்படின்னு, அப்படி அங்கதான் வந்து அவருடைய வள்ளுவருடைய நகைச்சுவை இருக்குது அங்க. நீங்க இது அழகா வந்து நான் அந்த 18 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் பார்த்தேன். அந்த 18 டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் புக் வந்து செம்மொழி ஆய்வுனர் கொண்டு வந்த புக்கு பார்த்தேன். இதுல அந்த பெல்லிங்கிற வேர்டை நீங்க யூஸ் பண்றீங்க. அதாவது யூ டாக் டு த ரீடர், யூ ஆர் வெரி க்ளோஸ் டு த ரீடர். நீங்க வந்து வள்ளுவருக்கு மட்டும் நெருக்கம் இல்லை, இந்த ரீடருக்கு நெருக்கமா போய் when the ear lacks food, feed a little to the belly. இங்கதான் அஷப் சொல்ற மாதிரி ஒரு கம்மா போட்டா நல்லா இருக்கும். இந்த ear lacks food, feed a little to the belly. இதை நீங்க எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்றீங்க பாத்தீங்களா? இந்த 1.5 நிமிஷத்துல இந்த வீடியோ வந்து 1.5 நிமிஷமா தான் இருக்குது, 2 நிமிஷம் 13 செகண்ட். நீங்க ரொம்ப அழகா ஒரு சொன்னீங்க, நரிஷ்மெண்ட் ஆஃப் இன்டெலெக்ட், நரிஷ்மெண்ட் ஆஃப் பாடி. அப்படி சொல்லிட்டு அந்த வீடியோ முடியும் போது ஒரு ஃப்ரூட் இருக்கும் செடியில, அதை அப்படியே எடுத்து வாயில போட்டு அந்த போற போக்குல வந்து இது ஒரு லெக்சர் கிடையாது, இது வந்து இட்ஸ் a sharing of experience and thoughts. If you accept it, accept it. If you don't like it, leave it. And this is what I enjoy. அது வந்து அந்த வீடியோ ரொம்ப அழகா பார்த்து எனக்கு அந்த நீங்க இந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் நல்லா இருக்கு, சிம்பிளா இருக்கு. And the way you explain within 1 minute, within 30 seconds, the brevity, that's also simply superb. And there is a truth in it, truth in capital letters in your explanation, in your speech. That's what I like the most actually. So அது ரொம்ப நல்லா இருந்தது அந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் 412. அதான் சொல்லலான்னு பார்த்தேன்.
அதை கேட்டு ரொம்ப மிக்க மகிழ்ச்சிங்க.
எனக்கு ஒரு கேள்வி. You were brought up in America, right? and I am in America for about 23 years now. So what I see, the biggest difference between India or in Tamil Nadu and America, we have so many ethical books written in Tamil or Indian languages. But in the US, at least from my knowledge, comparatively, they are very few, right? Most of the things are in the Bible, but there are other things too. But if you see the quality of people, right? I see without reading those books, the ethical books, without reading Thirukkural, the people here in America, forget about the personal life. I mean, there could be some differences, but from my experience, at least 70 to 80% of the people are honest. They help others. They're kind. They didn't read anything. They didn't read Thirukkural. They didn't read Avaya. But how? I mean, how do you see that from your side? I mean, how do you explain this?
Well, I believe we get inspiration for what it means to live well and to act well, to comport ourselves well from all kinds of sources. The example of our parents, the examples of our teachers, the examples of our friends. We find it also in works of literature and works of drama and films and so on. And we find it in our own hearts. And I think that we discover those things. What does it mean to be honest? By our lived experience. Somebody once jokingly said, if somebody has written a book of ethics, you know that people are behaving badly because you wouldn't need it if people were behaving well. And I could understand the joke of that. But I also think that, there are so many things which combine in any person's life to help them to live a good life, their own, even just their own intuitive knowing. And for such a person, a book like the Thirukkural or any of the many different kinds of works of ethics or moral philosophy, of guidance that we can find from various traditions, they help to strengthen our own capacity to notice, to be clear in our hearts and minds of what we are doing and why we want to be as honest and as forgiving and as compassionate as we may in fact be able to be. And so there is an interesting, I think of Thiruvalluvar in many guises. One of the guises I think of him in as a friend, somebody who I get to be in dialogue with, I get to have a conversation with, and who can remind me of things that I may have known but forgotten, or thought were important, but then in the rush of daily life that maybe I don't need to worry about those things as much. And they may also share a new thought. But there's this complex interrelationship we can have with a book like the Thirukkural, where we get to be as we are right now in this very rich conversation. We get to continue growing, and things that maybe we thought of when we were young and had forgotten we'll be reminded of. Or maybe as we get older, we'll see, that's what Thiruvalluvar, as well as my grandmother or my grandfather or my teacher, were trying to express to me from their own lived experience. And so I think a work like this can be exactly as so beautifully mentioned earlier, a kind of nourishment for the body, for the soul, for the heart, and also for our sense of integrity, our sense of, I'd like to do well by the people that I am with. I'd like to do well by my heart.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Thank you.
There's an old, I don't know, I think it's an African proverb which says, the hand always, even in darkness, the hand always knows the way to the mouth. You don't need a light to know where your mouth is for eating food. So this is something similar. You see, CR mentioned in the beginning that I used to compare translations in English. I had started putting translations, not scanned, typed in various languages and put on more than 20 languages. My wife has helped me. My son has helped me. And people ask me, what about English? English, there are hundreds of translations available, many of them available online. Why do you need one? Then people kept asking, in Tamil also. I put it in Tamil. Tamil is already there. In English, I thought no two translation will contain the best. The best translator is who has managed to translate the maximum number of couplets close to the original in style, content, and fun. All these things matter. Thirukkural has so many things. So in that sense, I compare, and then wherever a new translation comes, I compare. I look at, is there anything that something that can beat the ones that I have already selected? So I would like to, I have read only 12 of your chapters, which were accessible to me. And I would like to give the credit of at least telling the 3 or 4 that I have read, and appear to be brilliant. இவர் சொன்ன மாதிரி பிரிதொரு சொல் வெல்லாமை அறிந்து அது மாதிரி one is குறள் number 872 வில்லேர் உழவர் சொல்லேர் உழவர். அந்த குறளை நீங்க oppose those who plow with bows, not those who plow with words. It is literal as well as easily understandable. And that is a beautiful rendering. The other one is 157. The Tirunalla Tarpiriyar Pirar Sayinum no nondu. No nondu. Nondu is a word we still use. Nondu poitenda. Even now in a different nondu poyirukana. Adu Thiruvalluvar use பண்ணிருக்காரு பாருங்க. அறநல்ல செய்யாமை நன்று. இது வந்து நீங்க better to suffer wrong than to wrong others who wrong you. I don't think anyone has rendered this so perfectly. You see, the problem is everyone cannot bring out everything in one translation. That's why I started look at search. I find one in Thomas, I find one in Manimohan, I find one in P.S. Sundaram, like that, you know. So the other one is which I wrote down. The last one, I would like to, maybe another one, 784. Nagadar Poruttandu Nattal, Migadika Merchandi Idital Poruttu. Not for laughter, the making of friends, but thunder when going too far. So you have, I don't know whether a newcomer would be able to appreciate what thunder means here. But you are conversant in English, you may be able to explain it better. The other one is 671, Surchi Mudivu Tunivaidal. Resolve is the end of debate. Resolve is the end of debate, not resolution. You have used the word resolve. But to let resolve languish. It's a very short and very crisp. These are the 4 selections I have written down, and I have a question for you, something related to that. This, which kural, at least maybe many more than one, you found it the most difficult to translate and took some time, and finally you came out of it. And then which one at that great difficulty, finally you got that moment. I have managed it brilliantly. Can you give one example, one or 2 examples?
That's a great question. There is one that I think I did maybe 60 or 70 versions, and I put them all down and I said, no, not this one, no, not this one, no, not this one. I'd have to look back. I don't remember now exactly which one it was, but there are certain verses that gave me a great deal of trouble. And in fact, I had a fear doing this, that it would never end, because of course we can study a work like this our entire lives and continue to learn. And so I thought, I'll be on my draft 10, and then I'll read through my draft 10 and I'll think, no, it's not done yet. And then I'll do draft 11, and then I'll read through draft 11 and no, it's not done yet. But I had the very strange experience of coming to a point where I realized, no, I think I've taken the translation as far as I can take it now. I'm ready to let it go.
Publish.
I'm ready to let it be published and people can read it. And, knowing that maybe 10 years from now, I'll want to revisit some of the translations. But there was a satisfaction which came, particular verses would give me the sense like, yes, this at least captures some aspect that I want to share. Maybe enough of an aspect that I can entice a reader to maybe learn Tamil and get to explore it in the original language. But there has also been the satisfaction of, I think to the level that it was possible for me, given the helpers, the circumstances of my own life, I've taken this as far as I feel I can take it at this point. And now I get to let it go and people can learn from it and debate it and hopefully it will be a doorway for other people, an invitation to enter into a doorway, enter into a relationship, to change the metaphor, that will be nourishing for many people in many ways. That is at least my hope.
Panbum painum adu, that you use root and flower. That is very interesting because it's a very common Thirukkural. Anbum maranum udaithayin ilvalkai panbum painum adu. Very common one. But to translate this into an effective way is very difficult. I don't know which one I had. This is kural number. What is it? Kural number?
இது வந்து 45.
I had chosen actually Dias translation. Family life actuated by love and virtue, endows it with character and happiness. I like that. And you have character, you have root and flower. Use the word root and flower. So there are roots below the ground as well as above the ground. Any particular reason why you took
I
that?
wanted to convey the sense of the deepest level of one's rootedness or groundedness or one's panbu, that very deep quality that we may embody in our life and in our actions. And I wanted to also give the sense of the flourishing, the all the way from the root to the end result, the flourishing, the flower at the end. So I chose a somewhat more, unusual perhaps, but I wanted in that image to convey something of the entire spectrum. From the quality to the flourishing of that quality embodied in the living world.
ரொம்ப ரொம்ப அருமையான ஒரு சிமிலி. அந்த ரூட்ஸ், வேர் வந்து அன்பு, பழம் வந்து அதோடைய ரிசல்ட், எண்ட் ரிசல்ட். ரொம்ப ரொம்ப அழகா இருக்கு. இவருக்கு ரொம்ப பிடிச்ச குரல் உங்களுக்கு நீங்க சொல்லும் போது, தமிழ்நாட்டுல யாராவது திருக்குறள் சொல்லுங்க அப்படின்னா உடனே அகர முதல எழுத்தெல்லாம் நிறுத்துங்க, வேற குரல் சொல்லுங்க அப்படின்னு கேட்போம். ஆனா உங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப பிடிச்ச குரல் ஒரு இன்டர்வியூல பார்த்தேன். அந்த வேர்டு துப்பார்க்கு, அது எனக்கு கூட சரியா சொன்னது முழுசா வருமானு தெரியல எனக்கு, அந்த பக்கத்துல வச்சிருக்கேன். அது நீங்க சொல்லும் போது ஒரு அழகு இருக்கு. அதை ஒரு தடவை சொல்லிட்டு அப்புறம் வந்து இந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன்ல வந்து சேலஞ்சஸ்ல வந்து இந்த குரல் ஒரு மாதிரி பண்ணிட்டீங்க, துப்பார்க்கு துப்பாய பண்ணிட்டீங்க, அதை முழுசா சொல்லிட்டு நீங்க சொல்லிடுங்க. இந்த 359 359 சார்பு உணர்ந்து சார்பு கெட ஒழுகின் மற்றழித்து சார்தரா சார்தரும் நோய். ரொம்ப என்னை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் ரொம்ப டிஃபிகல்ட்டான, ரொம்ப கஷ்டமான குரல். இதை கொண்டு வரது எப்படி கொண்டு வந்திருக்கீங்கன்னு தெரிஞ்சுக்க விரும்புறேன். இந்த ரெண்டு முடிச்சுட்டு அப்புறம் நான் கன்க்ளூடிங் ஐ ஹாவ் 2 questions. அது அப்புறம் வரேன் நான். இந்த இதை சொல்லுங்களேன், துப்பார்க்கு கொஞ்சம் சொல்லுங்களேன், நீங்க அழகா சொல்லுங்களேன்.
துப்பார்க்கு துப்பாய துப்பாக்கி துப்பார்க்கு துப்பாயதும் மழைங்கிறது அது வந்து சரி, எனக்கு முழுசா திருப்தி ஆகலை. ஏன்னா அது திருப்தி ஆகாது. ஏன்னா துப்பார்க்கு துப்பாய துப்பாக்கி துப்பார்க்கு துப்பாயதும் மழைங்கிறதுக்கு ஈடு இல்லை. அதுக்கு அப்படி விளையாடுறாரு திருவள்ளுவர். So I tried to get at least something of the playful alliteration into the verse. So I translated it, making food fit for feeding, and itself food that feeds rain. It's not the sound. It's not quite the sound of raindrops on a roof, but at least there is something of this, the sound of the F sound having its playful way through the verse. So there is when I feel I've brought it some distance, and hopefully that distance might entice someone to come this way into the Tamil and to explore what I think is a particularly delightful verse. The other one you were asking about, the
359.
The translation that I have is this: if one severs all bonds, knowing what bears one, the suffering that binds unbinds.
Yeah. Ashraf?
No, this is a very interesting couplet. I don't know, there's something related that I would like to ask, since CR reminded this kural. There are people who go by the chapter title. When they interpret a verse, they would like to stick to what the chapter conveys. There are some who look at the couplets standalone verse. They did not be bound by the chapter's heading on top. Which school you belong to? Of course, every couplet its own meaning. Standalone, it conveys a meaning. Do you try to every time? Do you consider that to be read with respect to the chapter title or on its own?
I think that it depends on the verse, and I also think that it depends on what one who is listening to or reading the verse needs. I think there are certain verses that perhaps at a certain time stand well on their own and give you what you need for that particular point in your life on their own. And then there are other verses which, not only in the context of their chapter, but in the context of the Thirukkural as a whole, really start to sing. And to me, something that marvelous that can happen is when you have spent time with the whole work, as you start to realize that there's also the commentary that the verses make on each other, right? That you can have 2 or 3 or 10 of these verses that you can put them in conversation with each other, and then something else will dawn upon your mind. Something else will occur to you in your heart that is a kind of, I think of it as a kind of silent commentary. That the arrangement of the verses in the chapters, the arrangement of the chapters in their subsections and sections, the arrangements of the work as a whole also is part of the teaching that it offers us, part of the inspiration that it can guide us with.
Interesting thing is,
and I could see his approach, this liberal approach, as one has to be not hard and bound that only chapter title, only this thing. You need to have a holistic look, and each couplet needs a different kind of treatment. In the couplet, in the 359, நான் பார்க்கிறேன் உங்க translation ரொம்ப அழகா இருக்கு. The மெய் உணர்தல், the chapter வந்து மெய் உணர்தல், liberation, various traditions, various spiritual tradition has got a various meaning of moksha, liberation, mukti. You use a different terminology, but the idea is get liberated. நீங்க இதுக்கு இந்த குறளுக்கு நீங்க 359ல என்ன பாக்குறீங்கன்னா, you got a sense of it. நீங்க இந்த சார்பு is a binding, தலை, சைவ சித்தாந்தம் தலை, it will say it binds you. So once you know the binders, once you address the binders, then you are liberated. அது அழகா அத மறுபடியும் ஒரு தடவை சொல்லுங்க, then we can pass on. And the 359 very succinctly put it. You got the sense of it, actually, my feeling. Yeah.
If one severs all bonds, knowing what bears one, the suffering that binds unbinds.
And maras, the Buddhist traditions, Tan maras are the one which are binding you. They're binding the soul. Then once you address the maras, your Tan maras are killed, Tan maras are conquered, then you are liberated. And it's very nicely put. Very nicely put. Thank you.
I don't know why CR brought this up. Maybe I don't know whether he's aware of my thoughts on this couplet. That's why he asked whether we stick to the chapter heading and while interpreting verses. Now, this has a this couplet standalone. Forget about the chapter. And I have realized the reading Parimela Rivers arrangement of couplets within a chapter. He invariably pushes the couplet that has least relevance to the title to the end of the chapter. He combines similar ones, but invariably the odd ones will be the last one or last but one. I have done a statistical analysis also. Now 360 is one and 359 is another. Now Sarbu, people take it as a dependence. Now this we had suffered from COVID. Serious problems. Sarbu is dependence, interdependence of one being with another. So, Sarbu unarndu, you have to realize that dependence. Sarbu keda oligin. Matru adithu means destroy. Sardarum, noi means disease. Now, this is a very interesting couplet. There are certain things that a poet inadvertently mentions. You cannot expect scientific facts in a 2000 or 1000-year-old classic, but a good work is that can lend itself to interpretations for the future. The poet wouldn't have said so, wouldn't have thought about that. So my rendering for this is to one who does not ruin, Adithu. Realizing dependence, related ills will not cling. The diseases that come out of your destruction will not suffer, will not cling. This is one way of looking at it. I have two translations, but that is the beauty of Thirukkural. Standalone, it has its own meanings.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I like the other one. I have told this several times. Yenai vagayam theriye kannum, venai vagayam veragum mandar palar. Yenai vagayam theriye kannum. Whatever you do to select a person to do a job, because of the nature of the job, the person himself can change. So it's not his fault. It's the job itself. Think about this. I mean, 2000 years ago, he thought about this, which can be still applied, which is still true, right? So, I mean, the Sarbu Kuralko and the Kuralko, they're all, there is no comparison. I have one question. So you translated this in English, and probably I'm assuming you talk about this to non-Tamil speaking or English people, trying to explain what Thirukkural says. So what is the feedback on what questions you get and what kind of discussions you get into, when you try to do this?
That's a wonderful question. My favorite response was after giving a talk, somebody in the audience exclaimed, "This is a work for our time." And I thought that was so wonderful because, it is a work for so many times. One might say it's work for all times. But to make the connection, to say, this work written so many centuries ago is also for this century, is also for this time, is also for who we are now with all of our predicaments, going through a pandemic, going through, global insecurity, all of these kinds of things. And so what gratifies me most when I have the opportunity to speak about the text, about the work, is to hear people realize, see for themselves, taste, if you will, for themselves how relevant the verses can be, how they can in fact speak to us here now in our very circumstances, even if the person has never heard of the Tamil language or heard of Thirukkural. That to me has been the most gratifying response that I've been lucky to receive.
Awesome.
Thirukkural, unlike
Yeah, once you are done, நம்ம அந்த பிக்சர்ஸ் எல்லாம் இருக்கு கொஞ்சம் கொண்டு வரேன் நான். நீங்க நம்ம இறுதிக்கு 2-3 கேள்வி கேட்டுருவோம்.
Thirukkural is unlike religious texts or mystical works. It is a translatable work. That is the beauty of it. Whether you translate it rightly or wrong, that is different. It is a straightforward message, so it is no need to know Tamil. If you know Tamil, yes, great. But if you rightly translated the target language, it is a universal relevance, nothing mystical about it, it's all practical. Very few chapters, 1 or 2 chapters, some of the couplets, depending on your philosophical prediction, that also is translatable. So that is the beauty of Thirukkural. If you read the Quran, there are translators who say, and the very first sentence is, the Quran cannot be translated. Remember, first sentence. But still he translates it. If we can't translate it, you call it as a book of universal relevance, latest guidance for mankind, the ultimate one. And it has to be translatable. Otherwise, we cannot expect everyone to know Arabic. So Kural in that sense, as they say, இறைவனால் மனிதனுக்கு எழுதப்பட்டது பகவத்கீதை, மனிதனால் மனிதனுக்கு எழுதப்பட்டது இருக்கிறார். So it has to be translatable, it is translatable. That is the beauty of that.
சரி, படங்களுக்கு போறதுக்கு முன்னாடி
படத்துக்கு போயிடுங்க. எனக்கு ஒரே ஒரு கேள்வி நான் கடைசியில கேட்டுக்கிறேன்.
கேளுங்க.
இல்ல, எனக்கு ஒரு கேள்வி. படத்துக்கு போறதுக்கு முன்னாடி நீங்க சிங்கப்பூர்ல ஒரு இன்டர்வியூல you told that திருக்குறள் வந்து ஒரு மனிதனை, அதாவது முழுமையான மனிதன் எப்படி இருக்க வேண்டும், அதாவது வாட் இஸ் எ கம்ப்ளீட் பர்சன், அதாவது ஹவு எ கம்ப்ளீட் பர்சன் ஷுட் பி அப்படின்றது திருக்குறள் சொல்லுதுன்னு சொல்லி நீங்க சொல்லியிருக்கீங்க. ஸோ வாட் இஸ் யுவர் thought on what is considered a person, a complete person? How do you consider?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The reason that answer came to me is that, here is a work which is simultaneously very open and very practical in so many ways, but covers such an array of our experience. And so just by how much it touches upon, it is reminding us, is showing us that, to be a full person is to know, ethics at home, is to know how to be a principled leader, how to lead with integrity, or how to be an advisor to a leader, whatever the external form of the leadership or the leadership council may be. Friendship, all medicine, love, all of these things that we are not to be confined to just one area of life. We may specialize because we must focus our attention. We can't do everything. And yet, as human beings in a more than human world, we are also inextricably involved with the whole, with all other lives, both human and more than human. And so to be a complete person is to, at least in my view and my experience of the Thirukkural, is to strive to see the whole and to see our place in this interwoven whole, and to treat those relationships, all of those different relationships, with love, compassion, respect, and care.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. நான் இப்போ படத்துக்கு கொண்டு வரேன். You can just share your memories with these pictures. So these are all awesome pictures. I mean, I like them.
With these, I just, I've spoken a little bit about my journey, so I thought I could just give a few glimpses into that journey. This is Munivar Kuve Ramakodi with his wife, his daughter, his eldest daughter, and this is when my parents came to visit me all the way back in 1999, so quite a few years ago. But just a glimpse into the the beginning.
Mm-hmm. This is awesome.
And from the second year of my stay in Tamil Nadu, I lived in a village in the village of ValaiPatti. This is ValaiPatti, which is close to the airport of the Madurai airport. And so this is the family which began as my landlords and became my appa amma. These are two of my annan and one tambi. And I've been connected with this family now 23 years, and with this village as a whole. And the pictures that follow are just a few pictures from the village. A lot of the agriculture in the village is dryland farming. So this is from Wildcard. This is
peanuts.
non-irrigated land with the peanuts, and I just loved the hill of peanuts. You also see in the background Tirupparangundram is there, and I thought interesting. The mountain and the peanuts are somehow interrelated.
Wow.
They also grow here the beautiful jasmine flowers. So in the next slide, you can see some of the jasmine flowers. This is, we've taken them to market. I would, when I stay with my family and friends in the village, I often will go and in the morning I'll go and help pick flowers, and I'll go and we'll take them to the market to be sold.
Wow. Oh, this is them.
And so here, and let's see, this is from 2004 Pongal. And in fact, right there are two complete editions of the Thirukkural Urai Kottu from Thiruvalluvar Kasi Madam. And those, that's the edition that we studied. And so we inaugurated our study on Pongal, the day of Pongal in 2004. So I thought it would be interesting to show a glimpse of that first.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, forgot to ask one thing. How about you like the lungi?
அது நல்லா இருக்கு. அது இங்கேயும் கூட கட்டிக்கிட்டு இருக்கணும்னு ஆசை இருக்கு.
Interestingly, the Burmese national dress is lungi. And when I went to Myanmar once, I felt sick. I had to be admitted in the hospital. I was wearing a lungi. I didn't have the strength even to wear pants. So I wore a pant with great difficulty and went to the hospital. And I saw the doctor in lungi. அரே இதெல்லாம் கஷ்டப்பட்டு ஏன்பா பேண்ட மாத்திர லுங்கியிலே வந்திருக்கலாம்.
அதானே.
நைஸ், வெரி நைஸ்.
முக்காவாசி மடிக்கப்பட்ட லுங்கி, அதுல ஒரு ஸ்டெத்தோஸ்கோப் வேற, வெள்ளை கோட்டு, வேடிக்கையா இருந்தது.
This is just one example of my first encounters with Thirukkural was just on the bus. The verse that might be above the driver. This is I took this just when I was in Tamil Nadu this past December. But even, 24 years ago, when I was first taking the bus from Madurai to my teacher's house, there would be a very simple plaque on the wall, and I would enjoy, I could puzzle out the words. I didn't yet understand them at that point. But they were one of the ways I began to sense, here is a work which belongs not just in our books, but in our buses and on our tongues.
இது not only இந்த பஸ்ல இருக்கிறது it was a really very innovative idea. குஜராத்தி மொழியில திருக்குறளை டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணவங்க கோகிலான்னு ஒரு அம்மா இருக்காங்க. மெட்ராஸ்ல 12 இயர்ஸ்ல வந்தாங்க குஜராத்ல இருந்து. 2014ல அவங்க குஜராத்தி மொழியில டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணிட்டாங்க. அவங்களும் இதே தான் சொன்னாங்க. நான் பஸ்ல பார்த்தேன், முதல்ல பார்த்து படிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சேன். அந்த பஸ்ல போட்டது. இப்ப அஷ்ரப் ஒரு நல்ல ஐடியா கொடுத்திருக்காரு. இது வெறும் போர்டா இருக்கக்கூடாது, எலக்ட்ரானிக் போர்டு வந்துச்சு. every 10 minutes 5 minutes keep changing. நல்ல ஐடியா அஷ்ரப் கொடுத்திருக்காரு. அரசு இது எடுக்கணும்னு நினைக்கிறோம். கண்டிப்பா அது நடக்கும்.
You get used to that. All buses have this, so it's fixed in your mind. It doesn't change. When it changes, it will draw the attention of people. நான் புதுசா வந்திருக்குதே, என்ன படிப்பாமே.
ஆமா ஆமா,
நல்ல ஐடியா. இது இந்த போட்டோ.
So the previous photo was so my youngest brother, he was one of the reasons that so earlier you heard the story of me coming back and visiting my amma in the village, and she had been close to death, and she hadn't died, and I had gotten to see her one last time. Part of the reason I came back for that visit was because this Thambi had said, only if my older brother comes back will I get married. And so this is the picture taken. This is that Tambi, but this is taken. Oh, this is last December. So he would have been married then 13 years. And so I wanted. This is from the most recent trip. So here he is with his eldest son. And the next picture is me with that same family you saw earlier, but now you can. This is with my two older brothers, my younger brother, and their families. They were seeing me off as I was returning to the United
Reminded
States.
of the seeing you in the midst of all these people, like the Shiva Pujayil Karadi, saying he's the odd man out, cat among the pigeons.
Very nice.
Look at the smile on everyone's face. I know that is what you know. It's only the hearts speak to each other.
Correct.
Mm.
This is the one I was amazed. I mean, you got a name here, P. Tom.
Yeah, so Thomas என்கிறது Tom சுருக்கமா சொல்லுவாங்க Tom. And so I was because I'm one of the family, they insisted that I would be on the flex for the kalyana. So they put up a picture and they surprised me, and there it was hanging in front of the village for the wedding. And interestingly, P, so the family's father, Perlachi, so P also works because my last name begins with letter P. So it's a nice intercultural, intercontinental way of words.
I just want to give my own interpretation of your three words, Thomas, Hitoshi, Pruiksma. Just tell me whether it is right or wrong. Thomas is, of course, the Christian name. Okay, Saint Thomas. Hitoshi, if I'm not wrong, he refers to a place, and Pruiksma is your surname or tradition name. Is that right?
Yes, so Pruiksma is my father's family's name, comes from the Netherlands. Hitoshi is a word from Japanese, and so that comes from and represents, as it were, my mother's family, whose roots go back to Okinawa in Japan. And so there is in my name the meeting of different worlds. Even from my childhood, I was living between worlds, and so in some ways my later life as a translator and as a poet is continuing learning to move between different places.
In a way, you are a true global citizen.
This slide is from 2020. So in this village, every Masi, they have what they call Masi Pongal, and it's a beautiful festival. Some of 4 to 10 to 12 days, depending on how many dramas are put on. Nardagam. The first Nardagam will be put on by the village as a whole, and then different families or groups of people will put on a drama in honor of some wish that was fulfilled or some special event. And I, from the first time I was living in the village, I thought, well, maybe one day I will have some reason to help sponsor a village drama. And in 2019, my Tambi mentioned that my brothers and my family in the village were thinking maybe this would be a good year to put on a drama together. So with my family, we sponsored one of the last, in fact, of this series of dramas. And this was March 2020, so just before everything became, the lockdown began and so on. We were, by good fortune, able to celebrate with this drama in the festival. This is the cover of my first translation from Tamil, which was from Avvayar. That came out in 2009 and was just recently reissued in a second edition last year, 2022. And it was really translating Avvayar that prepared me to, without me knowing it was preparation, prepared me to translate Thirukkural. Both are written in Venba. Of course, we have 4-line Venba, and then we have Kural Venba. But even here, Avvayar was guiding me and leading me forward. And this is the cover of the translation that we've been speaking about. I'm particularly delighted with the cover that Beacon Press put together for the book.
Yeah, this is really awesome. So much appealing. Very attractive. This is in the
This
shop.
is in the Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle, Washington. We did the book launch from Elliott Bay. We did it online because it was still so many places were closed. But then I later went in and signed copies, and so I wanted people to see, here's Thirukkural on the bookshelf right next to the Tao Te Ching, right next to work by people like Thich Nhat Hanh and other global luminaries.
So there one related question. You see, Tao Te Ching is one of the most translated classics in the world. Even now, people translate. The Kural is also translated, but 99% is all by local, regional persons. Kural is not translated as much as Tao Te Ching in a day-to-day, daily basis by foreigners. What could be the reason why?
I think that, even when I was preparing to do my own translation and applying for grants to do so, I was quite surprised that in 2016 in North America, there was not a complete translation of the Thirukkural in print for purchase in a bookstore. And, and people said, how can this be? There's so many, translations that have been done. But I think to do the work of a translation, especially if it aspires to be a literary, poetic translation, is that the work has to enter into the sensibility of an entire people, of the English-speaking world. And for whatever reason, the Tao Te Ching has entered into that world. And it is my hope that this translation may be one of the steps toward the Thirukkural taking a much larger place in the English-speaking world than it has taken so far.
Can you Ilanga konjam zoom out pandrீங்களா?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what that book is in the corner right below in red. The book, I think it is a Tibetan book of the dead. If I'm not wrong, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't see. I don't remember.
This one is Saving the Planet.
That's Thich Nhat Hanh, the wonderful Buddhist monk.
Yeah. Now here is a related question. So first stage is translation. Then next stage is taking to the people, academics. This is what my understanding. Academics and scholars and the people who lead a very virtuous life. And then the final stage is to the commoners. Not necessarily it has to happen in the same sequence. It can happen in any way. As you said, though the translation work started about 200 years back, 1794, the first translation started. Why it has not reached the masses and what we need to do to reach out, because if you look at UNESCO's tagline, their vision is building peace in the minds of men and women. How do we? I mean, when you read Thirukkural is a comprehensive material. Everything is there, and you understood it. You really realized it, and you are. In fact, we need to be thankful to you as people from this part of the world, where it is originated. That here is a man who tried to take it to the world stage and to the different personalities, and even your YouTube videos. See, you focus on a particular chapter. You discuss with the several personalities about 20 to 30 minutes. That's one way of looking at in depth a particular chapter, and they're experts in that particular field. So about 20-30 minutes tops. So that is really one of the nice way of taking to the people. So how do we take it to the last man? And you said not a single translation was print available. Now things are slightly improving because Central Institute of Classical Tamil has taken a task of commissioning people. What has come from you is it has come from the heart. It's come from you are a global citizen, but what is there in the heart is Kural. They are commissioned people. They are trying to reach out to academics, and if any language in the world where more than 10,000 people speak, they are ready to a small honorarium. I will not call it as a big funding. A small honorarium they give, and they are trying to come out with 100 titles in a couple of years' time. Already 40 titles, I think 30 plus titles have come. So what is your idea? How do we take it to the last people on the last bench?
There's such a big task, but I think that the best answer in this moment that I could give would be one person at a time, to share, somebody who knows the book, for instance, the work, might share it with a friend, an English-speaking friend, for example, who may not have heard of it, and to share it with some example from their own life. This is where I learned why this verse makes so much sense to so many people, something like that, and allow the human connection, person by person, to share.
Yeah.
Here is a guide that can be a friend, a teacher, an inspiration, and then let it go like that. That would be one of the ways I would imagine and hope that it could happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, we need to make that. We need to create that or make that connection.
This is also part of the connection.
And I've also, I've dedicated at least this, year to 1 or 2 years following the publication of the book to speaking about the work. And I've been speaking about it in English and English-speaking countries, and I've also been privileged to speak about it in Tamil in various locations. And I was in Singapore and in Tamil Nadu this last November and December, and so this is just one example of some of the of one of the events I was honored to speak at. It's been amazing to me how here is another reason to read a book like this, because you learn. You get to meet such wonderful people. Here I am getting to be in a conversation with all of you across the world who have thought so deeply and carefully and with such heart and compassion about this work. Having done this translation, I've been able to meet some extraordinary people. Some of the people, for instance, who are speaking at this event, and some of the slides that come after this are people who, like you, share a passion for Thirukkural. For instance, Sivakumar, the actor, he, I think it was in August, he gave a long 3 or 4 hour speech, I believe it was in Erode, where he's doing exactly what I always think is such a powerful thing to do, which is to tie direct stories of life with particular verses. And so he heard about the translation through a mutual friend of ours and invited me to his house, and we had a lovely time discussing Thirukkural, discussing Tamil. Really a marvelous meeting. And there's several other wonderful writers. I got to meet, for instance, the writer Perumal Murugan, who I also got to meet the writer Jaya Mohan, wonderful contemporary Tamil writers. This is and scholars. This is the scholar Kuve Balasubramanian in Tanjavur, and so it's been really such a pleasure for me to be in dialogue with such eminent scholars and artists.
In fact, we missed you by a day. I got to know about the Chennai program. It is only 3 kilometers from my residence. And I was a bit lost with my friends, who one of them I know in this particular conversation we had in Anna Centenary Library. So I got to know a day later. Otherwise, I would have been there.
அடுத்த வாரம் போத நம்ம சந்திப்போம்.
கண்டிப்பா. எனக்கு கடைசி 2 கேள்வி இருக்கு. மத்தவங்க நீங்க எதனா கேட்டுதான் முடிச்சுக்கலாம். கேட்டு.
அஷப், நீங்க? இல்ல, அது ஒரு இதான் நீங்க இது மறுபடியும் taken from your website and YouTube only. You mentioned guide to practicing goodness and a good sense in daily life. Goodness and good sense. I liked it actually, the way it has been put there, nicely put it actually. And with all your efforts, really, I mean, I would say, the passion, what drives you, I could see is the passion and love for the humanity. Love for the humanity. Yes, this is the human life is very precious, as Avaya says. And why don't we live a wholesome life? And this is how I live. Well, why don't you live? This is a kind of not a preaching. It's a sharing of feeling. God, I sincerely pray God bless you. And we are though everyone we come from different tradition. We belong to one family, that is voice of Valluvar family. I used to say, whoever voices, whoever practices Valluvam and try to spread the message is all, we are one family, one family. And I thank on this occasion that your work is wonderful and we will travel together. Ashraf, நீங்க ஏதாவது கேள்வி இருந்தா சொல்லுங்க, நான் முடிச்சிட்டேன்.
மியூட்ல இருக்கீங்க அஷ்ரப்.
There are several questions of so many views I would like to exchange, but we are towards the end of the conversation. So let us conclude, and I would like to see more Thomases, more Hitoshis, more Pruiksmas to come forward, and then not necessarily only English, in other languages also. Learn Tamil, get the soul out of Thirukkural rather than just PHCT, Caspian Institute of Tamil. They are just commissioning people to get Thirukkural translated into number of languages. They have a target. They get people. I remember, I'm very happy that Persian translation has come out. Persian is a classical language. It's a disgrace that it didn't happen for a long time. And they have brought it out. I don't know how good the translation is. I remember approaching a Persian department in Delhi, Jamia University, and I gave them the Urdu translation because they know Urdu and Persian are close related. And the person actually he was looking for money. This is not the way to translate. We need people who are interested, at least care about, and then get interested. True, genuine literary scholars are difficult to find. These days, everything is money. Everything is money. You may have to auction Thirukkural and get.
Ashraf, I slightly beg to differ from you. Something is better than nothing. Let there be some beginning. Not that people are doing it for money. As I said, what they give is a very, very small amount, and people really, let's not belittle the effort. Gunam nadi, utramum nadi, outrul mihai nadi, mikka kolal. Something positive will come out of that effort. The effort is, it's a government supported effort, but if you're waiting for a person like Thomas to come out with the translation, you have to wait for 100 years. Because the last man who translated a non-Indian, non-Tamilian, perhaps you know better, you are an official scorer for Thirukkural. He has got all the data in his hand. So it was 100 years we had to wait. So let the wait be not long. Let the work inspire more people. That's what my summation.
Okay.
Yeah, like Siaraya and Ashrafaya said, I totally agree. I mean, there are several people who have done several things to take the good things out of Thirukkural and give it to people. We saw one conductor. He was talking about Thirukkural while in the bus itself. When the bus stops for a tea, he used to talk about Thirukkural. Right? What's his name? Conductor.
His name is Kandaka Subramaniam. See, the voice of Valluvar family. There are people who are bus conductor, and there is a conductor and conductor. Conductor is eye surgeon. So we have got everyone, the whole spectrum of people.
So everyone has done several things to Thirukkural and several translations in several languages. But what I see that stands out, that what you're doing is you don't not only translating, right? You are explaining this, you're adding your music to that, you're adding your linguistic skills to that, and also you're taking to the non-English people. I mean, I'm not saying we should take Thirukkural everywhere just because it is Thirukkural. I mean, the good things, we are all talking about good things, how to make a good world, right? So it's amazing, I would say. So my question is, I have two questions. One is, in America, Berkeley has a Tamil chair, and recently Harvard started the Tamil chair.
Then Canada, Toronto started the Tamil chair. Then Houston is trying. I know German has a Tamil chair. I don't know what is the status right now. But are you planning to collaborate with these people? Because I think that's the right venue or right direction we should take it further. But what is your thoughts?
I am, in fact, I am friends with a number of the people involved in the efforts that you've mentioned, and I am a good friend with the current Tamil chair at Harvard, and I'm delighted by those efforts and bringing to the academic setting, bringing much more awareness to the language and to the literature. I think it's a marvelous thing, and I'm happy to be part of that.
Awesome. So my last question is, it's an hypothetical question. If Thiruvalluvar comes in front of you, let's assume, what will be your one question and what will be your one request?
That is such a wonderful question. My question would be, how did you begin? Because we can see a work like this, and it is such an impressive work. And you may think, how could there be another Thiruvalluvar, another Abbayar? And so my question would be, how did you begin before you were Thiruvalluvar, when you were just Valluvar, doing your thing? How did you begin your own journey? That would be my question. And my request, I would ask if he would write one more chapter for the world today, what would it be on? I wouldn't necessarily ask him to write it. I think that would be asking a lot. But if he were to do such a thing, I would be curious what it would be and what it would say. That would be my humble request.
Exactly. That would be my question too. So thank you. கடைசியா என்ன கேட்கணுங்களா?
I think he is asking us, I missed it. I think he is asking us what, he is addressing the question to us. Or you are generally telling, I don't know, I thought he is asking us how we got interested in Thirukkural. Thomas is asking us, or generally?
Valluvar.
Valluvar, how, what?
உங்களுக்கே நீங்க திருக்குறள் எழுதுன்னு தோணுச்சு. நீங்க மட்டும் வந்து வெறும் வள்ளுவரா இருந்தீங்க.
அவரை வள்ளுவரை கேக்குறீங்க.
It is
Okay,
really
now we want to give you, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say.
No, now we want to give you a few minutes. I mean, whatever. I mean, if you want to add anything, so you can.
I simply wanted to say what a pleasure it has been to meet all of you in this way and to be able to begin a conversation. I am very grateful for your invitation and for your wonderful questions. And I hope that we will get to continue our conversation whenever and wherever that may happen. So, என்னுடைய மனமார்ந்த நன்றி, வணக்கம், மிக்க மகிழ்ச்சி.
நன்றி, உங்களுடைய நேரத்திற்கு நன்றி. ஏன்னா எங்களுக்கு வந்து இது ஒரு பெரிய, எங்களுக்கே ஒரு விழிப்பு தான் இது. It's a completely different perspective, different, என்ன சொல்ல, ஒரு நீ சொன்ன மாதிரி விழிப்புணர்வு தான் எங்களுக்கு. நன்றி.
இந்த இணைத்தானும் நல்லவை கேட்கன்னு ஒரு இது again phrase taken from Valluvam. Parthasarathi, ValaiTamil has got more than 2 lakh subscribers. Parthasarathi is a man of dream and action. He was a follower of M.S. Udayamurthy. He spent 17 years in Washington. He was the president of Washington Tamil Sangam. He conceived this idea of conversing with great people. When I say great people, whoever touches Thirukkural and try to live Thirukkural, like bus conductor Kanaga Subramani, to conductor Ramesh. He felt, sir, why don't you converse with these people and document it. And it will be inspiring. It will give a lot of inspiration to the people. When I read yesterday one of the commentaries of one lady from Tamil Nadu whom I got to know about a month back, Tenmozhi Monarangan, she has mentioned, I feel ashamed in this conversation of 1 hour 50 minutes your conversation. She has mentioned that you have made me to feel ashamed. I mean, you are inspired so much. You are doing so much for spreading the message of Valluvam, and I am not doing anything. This is the kind of sense you have driven in the minds of even the people from Tamil Nadu. They really, this is the purpose of this conversation. So Parthasarathi felt, please converse with the people and then document people. Then we started with Ashraf. In fact, that again is a divine intervention. Parthasarathi wanted to meet Ashraf for a long time actually. Then the first conversation we had was with Ashraf in the very same platform of Inai Nallavai Ketka. Again, Ilango is a software engineer, but he was in the back. Always he will keep himself in the back like Valluvar. He will never project himself except 3 or 4 places. Where Valluvar says, Yam Meya Kandavutri Illa Yeretundrum Vai Mayan Nallapera. When it comes, he comes out and declares from the rooftop, yeah, this is the man I believe in this philosophy. Like that, Ilango was in the background. So Ilango was brought to the fore. And like you see this logo of Voice of Valluvar, it means quite a lot. We conceived this symbol 2008. My son and my family was with me to put together my ideas, the philosophy and everything together. This is to connect people across the globe. And this conversation, you are part of us. And I must thank Parthasarathi, Ashraf, our Ilango, and you for being with us. And above all, Valluvar who is with us. Thank you, Thomas, Hitoshi, Pruiksma, and it's a wonderful time we had with you. And I thank on behalf of everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Suresh, we need to thank Suresh also. He was our technical support. So thank you so much, Suresh.
Thank you.
Suresh is from ValaiTamil.
Okay, thank you everyone, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Suresh is a linchpin. Linchpin, as Madhu says, a linchpin of he